The Duke's Unwanted Bride: How a Scorned Wife Built an Empire. The ballroom fell silent the night Duke Rowan Hale introduced his new Duchess, not with pride, but with a single cold glance that told everyone exactly what she was: a transaction. Elara Whitcomb had entered this marriage knowing she wasn't wanted, but she hadn't expected the brutal clarity of his first words to her in private. "Give me an heir, then stay out of my sight." But here's what no one knew. Not the whispering nobles, not her stone-hearted husband, not even Elara herself at that moment. The woman they dismissed would become the most powerful force in the kingdom, and the man who tried to discard her would one day beg for her forgiveness. Stick around to see how a wife with nothing becomes a woman who changes everything. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. The wedding had been beautiful. That was what everyone said afterward, their voices bright with champagne and envy. The flowers, white roses imported from the southern coast, their petals so perfect they looked painted. The dress, ivory silk that caught the light like water, a train that stretched 15 feet down the cathedral aisle. The ceremony itself, flawless, dignified, exactly what one would expect when a Duke of Rowan Hale's standing took a wife. Elara Whitcomb remembered none of it with any warmth. She remembered the weight of the gown, how it pulled at her shoulders until they ached. She remembered the smell of incense, so thick it made her lightheaded. She remembered Rowan's hand when he took hers for the vows, cold, impersonal, the grip of a man signing a business contract. Most of all, she remembered his eyes, dark, empty, looking through her rather than at her. "You may kiss the bride." He'd leaned in, pressed his lips to hers for exactly 2 seconds, pulled away before anyone could blink. The guests erupted in applause, but Elara had felt nothing except the sharp edge of her own humiliation. 3 hours later, she stood alone in the Duchess's chambers at Blackthorn Estate, still wearing that perfect dress, waiting for a husband who had barely spoken to her all day. The room was vast. Enormous windows overlooked the gardens, now dark under a moonless sky. The furniture was expensive: velvet and mahogany, gold fixtures, silk wallpaper in deep burgundy, a cage dressed up as luxury. The door opened. Rowan entered without knocking. He'd removed his formal jacket, loosened his cravat. Even rumpled, he was striking. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair slightly mussed, features sharp enough to cut, the kind of face that made women lose their sense. Elara had thought herself immune. She'd prepared for this marriage with clear eyes, no illusions. Her family needed the alliance. The Whitcombs had status, but no money. The Hales had both. Marrying Rowan secured her younger sister's futures, paid off her father's debts, saved them from ruin. She'd known it wasn't a love match, but she hadn't expected cruelty. Rowan closed the door behind him, looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Take off the dress," he said. Elara's hands didn't shake. She wouldn't allow it. "I need help with the buttons." "Then I'll help." He moved behind her, his fingers efficient and cold against her spine as he worked the tiny pearl buttons free. The dress loosened, slipped from her shoulders. She caught it before it fell, held it against her chest. "On the bed." The words were flat, transactional. Elara felt something twist in her stomach. Not desire, not even nervousness. Something darker. A kind of grief for the girl she'd been 6 months ago, before her father's creditors had come calling, before this arrangement had been made. She turned to face him. "Is this how it's going to be?" Rowan's jaw tightened. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Conversation? Some attempt at civility?" "We're married, Elara, not courting." "I'm aware." She let the dress fall, stood before him in her undergarments, refusing to cower. "But we're going to be living together, sharing a life. I thought perhaps—" "You thought wrong." He cut her off, voice hard. "Let me make this clear so there's no confusion. I need an heir. That's why you're here. That's the only reason you're here. Once you're pregnant, once you give birth, you can do whatever you like with your time. Take lovers, travel, spend my money. I don't care. But until then, this," he gestured between them, "is a business arrangement, nothing more." The words hit like blows. Elara had been prepared for coldness, distance, but this was something else. This was deliberate cruelty, a man drawing lines so sharp they drew blood. "Why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Why marry at all if you hate it so much? Something flickered across Rowan's face, gone before she could name it. That's none of your concern. I'm your wife. You're a means to an end. He stepped closer, and Alara hated that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. I need a legitimate heir. You need your family's debts cleared. We both get what we want. Everything else is irrelevant. Is it really that simple for you? Yes. The single word fell between them like a stone into still water. Alara wanted to scream, wanted to slap him, claw at that perfect face, make him feel even a fraction of what she was feeling. But she'd been trained better than that. Ladies didn't lose control. Ladies smiled and endured and survived. So she lifted her chin, met his cold gaze with her own. Then let's get it over with. Something changed in his expression. Surprise, maybe. He'd expected tears, she realized. Expected her to break down, to beg for tenderness or affection. The fact that she hadn't seemed to unsettle him. Good. He reached for her, and Alara closed her eyes. The marriage bed was as cold as the vows. Rowan was efficient, clinical. He touched her only as much as necessary, said nothing, kept his eyes closed the entire time. When it was over, he pulled away immediately, adjusted his clothes, and left without a word. Alara lay there alone in the enormous bed, staring at the canopy above, feeling hollowed out. This was her life now. She'd known it wouldn't be a fairy tale, but knowing and experiencing were two different animals entirely. The tears came then, silent and hot, streaming down into her hair. She let herself have 5 minutes. 5 minutes to grieve the future she'd never have, the love she'd never know, the choice that had been taken from her. Then she got up, washed, changed into a nightgown, and climbed back into bed. Tomorrow, she would be the perfect Duchess, poised, graceful, untouchable. But tonight, she let herself be heartbroken. The first month passed in a blur of social obligations and silent dinners. Rowan kept to his word. He came to her chambers 3 times a week, performed his duty without conversation, and left. During the day, he was barely present. He had business in the city, estate matters to attend to, 100 excuses to be anywhere she wasn't. Alara learned the rhythms of Blackthorn Estate quickly. The servants were efficient but distant, clearly taking their cue from their master. The housekeeper, Mrs. Barrow, was professional to the point of coldness. The butler, Hastings, treated Alara with impeccable courtesy and zero warmth. She was a stranger in her own home. The social circuit was worse. As the new Duchess of Blackthorn, Alara was invited everywhere. Luncheons, garden parties, charity auctions, evening soirees. She attended them all with a smile frozen on her face, enduring the subtle cuts and veiled curiosity. "Such a lovely match," Lady Pemberton said at a tea party, her voice dripping false sweetness. "Though I must say, we were all quite surprised. The Duke has been so resistant to marriage for so long." "He finally found the right woman," Alara replied smoothly, though the words tasted like ash. "And your family, the Whitcombs, terribly unfortunate about your father's investments." There it was, the real question beneath the pleasantries. Did she marry for love or money? Everyone already knew the answer. "My father is rebuilding," Alara said, meeting Lady Pemberton's gaze steadily. "Thanks to my husband's generosity." The older woman's smile sharpened. "How fortunate for everyone." Alara excused herself before she said something unforgivable. In the powder room, she gripped the edge of the marble sink, breathing through the urge to scream. This was her world now. Women who smiled while they eviscerated you, who turned your circumstances into gossip over tea and cakes. She looked at herself in the mirror, pale skin, dark circles under her eyes that she'd covered with powder, lips pressed into a thin line. "Give me an heir, then stay out of my sight." Rowan's words echoed in her head constantly. A reminder, a threat, a promise. She straightened her spine, smoothed her skirt, fixed her smile. Then she went back out to face them all. 6 weeks into the marriage, Alara met Vivian Ashford. It happened at a gallery opening, another endless evening of champagne and forced conversation. Alara was studying a painting, grateful for a moment alone, when a voice beside her said, "It's dreadful, isn't it?" She turned to find a woman about her age, maybe a few years older, with copper hair and sharp green eyes. Her dress was beautiful, but unconventional, deep emerald instead of the pastels most women wore, cut to show more shoulder than was strictly proper. "I'm sorry," Alara said. "The painting, it's derivative. No original thought at all." The woman gestured at the canvas, a generic landscape, technically proficient but soulless. "The artist is trying too hard to be someone he's not. You can see it in every brushstroke." Alara blinked, then, to her own surprise, laughed. "You're absolutely right. I usually am." The woman extended her hand. "Vivian Ashford. And you're the mysterious new Duchess of Blackthorn everyone's been whispering about." Alara hail. She shook Vivian's hand, relieved to meet someone who wasn't performing politeness. "Is it that obvious I'm being discussed?" "Darling, you're the most interesting thing to happen to this city in months. Of course they're discussing you." "I'm not sure that's flattering. It's not meant to be. Society is vicious." Vivian plucked 2 champagne flutes from a passing tray, handed one to Alara. "They smell blood in the water. A hasty marriage, a reclusive duke, a bride from a family in financial difficulty. The story writes itself." Alara's chest tightened. "You don't mince words." "Life's too short for mincing." Vivian took a sip of champagne. "I'll be blunt. Do you want actual friends, or do you want vultures dressed as ladies? Is there a difference in this world? If you're lucky." Vivian's smile softened. "I'm offering friendship, Alara. Real friendship. No gossip, no ulterior motives. Just 2 women trying not to lose their minds in this gilded nightmare." Something in Alara's chest cracked open. She'd been so alone, so completely, utterly alone. "I'd like that," she said quietly. "Good." Vivian linked their arms. "Now come on. I'll introduce you to the only other sane people at this party. There are 3 of them, and they're hiding on the terrace." For the first time since her wedding day, Alara felt something close to hope. Vivian hadn't lied. The women on the terrace, Catherine Moore, a widow with a sharp wit and sharper tongue, Margaret Chen, a merchant's daughter with unconventional ideas about business, and Diana Graves, a vicar's sister who volunteered at hospitals, welcomed Alara without pretense. "Newlywed?" Catherine asked, her eyes knowing. 6 weeks. "Ah. Still in the pretending everything is fine stage." Alara's laugh came out strangled. "Something like that." "It gets easier," Margaret said gently, "learning to navigate it all." "Does it?" The women exchanged glances. "No," Diana admitted. "But you get stronger. That helps." They talked for hours, about the absurdity of social rules, the limitations placed on them, the frustration of having minds and ambitions but no outlets. It was the most honest conversation Alara had had in months. When Rowan's carriage came to collect her, she felt almost human again. He was inside, silent as always. Alara settled into her seat, staring out the window. "You were gone a long time," Rowan said. She glanced at him. "I made friends." "Friends? Is that surprising?" His jaw worked. "Be careful who you trust, Alara." "Because everyone's after something?" "Yes." She almost laughed. "You'd know all about that, wouldn't you?" The words came out sharper than intended. Rowan's eyes narrowed. "Meaning?" "Nothing." She looked back out the window. "Forget it." They rode the rest of the way in silence. 2 months into the marriage, Alara's monthly courses came. She wasn't pregnant. She told Mrs. Barrow, who informed Rowan, who said nothing. But that night, he came to her chambers earlier than usual, his expression tight. "We'll continue," he said. "I assumed as much." He studied her face. "You're not disappointed?" It wasn't a question, but Alara answered anyway. "Would you care if I was?" Something flickered in his eyes. "No." "Then why ask?" Rowan was silent for a long moment. Then he moved toward her, and Alara steeled herself for another cold, mechanical encounter. But he paused, looked at her, really looked, for the first time since their wedding. "You've lost weight," he said. Alara blinked, surprised. "I haven't noticed." "You should eat more." "I eat plenty." "You look tired." "I am tired." The words came out before she could stop them. I'm exhausted, Rowan. This life, this marriage, this constant performance, it's draining. He frowned. What performance? Are you serious? She laughed, hollow. I smile and nod and pretend to be happy while your entire social circle dissects me like a specimen. I attend events where women I've never met decide whether I'm worthy of basic decency. I sleep in a house where no one speaks to me unless they have to. And every few nights, my own husband comes to me like I'm a... She stopped, pressed her hands to her face. Like you're a what? Rowan's voice had changed, something rough in it now. Like I'm nothing, Ilara whispered. Like I'm an object, a means to an end, just like you said. Silence. When she lowered her hands, Rowan was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. That's what you agreed to, he said finally. I know. Then why are you complaining? The question ignited something in Ilara's chest, something hot and furious. Because I'm human, the words exploded out of her. Because even though I agreed to this, even though I knew what I was signing up for, it still hurts to be treated like I don't matter. You don't speak to me, you don't look at me, you don't even pretend to care if I live or die. That's not true. Isn't it? She stood, fury making her reckless. Tell me one thing you know about me, Rowan. One single thing beyond my name and my family's debts. He opened his mouth, closed it. Ilara laughed bitterly. Exactly. This isn't... He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. This isn't how this was supposed to go. How what was supposed to go? This marriage. It was supposed to be simple, clean, no complications. I'm not a complication. I'm a person. I know that. Do you? She stepped closer, and Rowan actually backed up. Because from where I'm standing, you've done everything possible to forget I exist, and that was fine when I thought I could just endure it. But I can't. I can't spend the rest of my life being invisible. Rowan's face had gone pale. What do you want from me? I don't know, Ilara's voice cracked. Conversation? Kindness? Some acknowledgement that we're bound together for life and that might mean treating each other like human beings? I can't give you what you're asking for. Why not? Because... He stopped, looked away. Because I don't know how. The admission hung in the air between them. Ilara felt her anger drain away, replaced by something sadder. Then we're both trapped, aren't we? Rowan said nothing. That night, he didn't touch her, just stood there for a long moment, looking lost, then turned and walked out. Ilara sat on the edge of the bed, feeling hollowed out. She'd married a ghost, a man so closed off, so determined to feel nothing that he'd turned himself into stone, and she was the one expected to live with the consequences. The next morning, Ilara made a decision. If Rowan wouldn't give her a life, she'd build one herself. She started small, began taking breakfast in the morning room instead of her chambers, forcing the servants to acknowledge her presence, started asking Mrs. Barrow questions about the estate, the staff, the household management. The housekeeper was surprised, but answered. Slowly, grudgingly, the ice began to thaw. Ilara learned the names of the maids, thanked the footmen, asked the cook about the menus. Small gestures, but they mattered. Within 2 weeks, the atmosphere in Blackthorn Estate had shifted. The servants still took their cue from Rowan's coldness, but Ilara's persistent kindness was creating cracks in the wall. She also began spending more time with Vivian and her circle. They met weekly for tea, sometimes at Vivian's home, sometimes at a small cafe in the city where they could speak freely. The conversations ranged from literature to politics to the frustrating limitations of their lives. I want to do something, Margaret said one afternoon. Something meaningful, not just attend parties and smile. Like what? Diana asked. I don't know. Help people, maybe. The women in the lower districts. They have nothing. No education, no opportunities. There are charities, Catherine pointed out, run by men who think giving poor women Bibles solves everything. Margaret's frustration was clear. I'm talking about real help, job training, education, things that change lives. Ilara leaned forward. What would that look like? A school, maybe? A place where women can learn trades, literacy, mathematics. skills they can use to support themselves. That's ambitious, Vivian said. It's impossible, Catherine corrected. No one would fund it. The men in charge don't want educated poor women. Too threatening. Then we fund it ourselves, Alara heard herself say. Everyone turned to look at her. How? Diana asked gently. None of us have independent wealth. I do. The words felt strange in her mouth. Or rather, my husband does. And as Duchess, I have access to household funds. Vivian's eyes lit up. Alara. He told me I could do what I liked with my time once. She trailed off, not wanting to share the specifics. He won't care what I spend money on, as long as it doesn't interfere with his life. Are you sure? Margaret looked concerned. If he finds out, let him find out. Something fierce was building in Alara's chest. He wanted a wife who'd disappear, fine, but I'll disappear doing something that matters. The women exchanged glances. Then Vivian raised her teacup. To the Whitmore School for Women. Whitmore? Alara asked. Your maiden name. It should be yours. Alara felt tears prick her eyes. She clinked her cup against Vivian's. To the Whitmore School. The others joined in, and for the first time since her wedding, Alara felt like herself again. Building the school became Alara's obsession. She spent her days hunting for a suitable building, interviewing potential teachers, drafting curricula. Vivian handled the legal paperwork. Margaret managed the finances. Catherine and Diana recruited students and donors. Within 6 weeks, they'd secured a small building in the Merchant District and enrolled 30 women. The official opening was modest, just the 5 of them and their students, no fanfare. But when Alara stood in front of those women, saw the hunger for knowledge in their eyes, she felt something shift inside her. Purpose. This was what she'd been missing. This was what made the cold marriage, the lonely nights, the endless performance bearable. She was making a difference. Rowan predictably noticed nothing. He was away more often than not, dealing with business Alara wasn't privy to. When he was home, he barely spoke to her. Their encounters in her chambers continued 3 times a week, mechanical as ever. But Alara found she didn't care as much anymore. She had her own life now, her own work, friends who valued her mind, not just her title. 3 months after the school opened, Vivian cornered her at a society luncheon. Have you seen this? She thrust a newspaper into Alara's hands. It was a small article tucked in the society pages. Duchess of Blackthorn opens controversial school for lower-class women. Alara's stomach dropped. Controversial? Keep reading. The article was not kind. It questioned Alara's motives, suggested she was wasting her husband's money, implied the school was improper. Several anonymous sources claimed the Duke was displeased. Rowan doesn't even know, Alara said faintly. He will now. And he did. That night, he stormed into her chambers without knocking, the newspaper crumpled in his fist. What is this? He demanded. Alara set down her book, heart pounding. A school. I can see that. What I want to know is why I'm reading about my wife's activities in the newspaper instead of hearing about them from you. You never asked. I shouldn't have to ask. His voice rose. You're using my money, my name, Your indifference? Alara stood, matching his anger with her own. You told me to do what I liked with my time. I'm doing exactly that. I didn't mean start a scandal. It's only a scandal because I'm helping poor women instead of hosting tea parties. If I'd opened a charity for orphans or wounded soldiers, no one would care. That's not the point. Then what is the point, Rowan? She stepped closer. Because from where I'm standing, you don't actually care what I do. You care about appearances. You care that people are talking. His jaw clenched. You've made me look like a fool. I've made you look like a duke with a wife who does more than decorate ballrooms. Her voice shook with fury. But if that's too much for your precious reputation, then I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't just fade away like you wanted. I'm sorry I exist. The words seemed to hit him physically. He stepped back, his expression shifting from anger to something else. That's not what I... He stopped, ran a hand over his face. I never wanted you to fade away. Yes, you did. You said as much. I wanted things to be simple. Life isn't simple, Rowan. Marriage isn't simple. You can't just ignore another human being and expect it to work. He looked at her then, really looked, and Alara saw something unexpected in his eyes. Regret. The school, he said finally. Is it important to you? Yes. Why? She could have lied, could have said something diplomatic, but she was tired of pretending. Because those women have no choices, she said quietly. They're born into poverty, marry young, have children they can't feed. They die young and forgotten. And I know what it's like to have no choices. I know what it's like to marry a stranger because your family needs money, to live in a house where you don't belong, to smile while everything inside you is screaming. Rowan flinched. So yes, Alara continued, the school is important because if I can give even a few women the chance to change their lives, to make their own choices, then maybe this whole nightmare means something. Silence. Then Rowan said, Keep it open. Alara blinked. What? The school. Keep it running. I'll handle the scandal. I don't understand. He moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the frame. Didn't turn around. I'm not a good husband, Alara. I know that. But I'm not so far gone that I'd take this from you. Then he left, and Alara stood alone, her heart hammering, feeling like something fundamental had just shifted. The scandal didn't die. It multiplied. Within days, Alara's school became the favorite topic of every drawing room in the city. The newspapers ran more articles, some supportive, most scathing. Conservative voices called it inappropriate. Progressive ones called it radical. Everyone had an opinion about the Duchess of Blackthorn and her pet project. Alara learned to stop reading them. What she couldn't ignore was the shift in how society treated her. Invitations dried up. Women who'd once smiled through their disdain now cut her directly at events. Lady Pemberton, that venomous arbiter of social acceptability, made a point of turning her back when Alara entered rooms. Let them talk, Vivian said over tea at the school one afternoon. They were in the small office Alara had claimed, reviewing enrollment numbers. You're doing something that matters, that terrifies them. It's exhausting, Alara admitted. She rubbed her temples, fighting off a headache that had been building for days. I knew there'd be pushback, but this feels orchestrated. Because it is. Catherine swept in, tossing a stack of newspapers on the desk. Someone's feeding these journalists stories. Look at this one. It quotes an anonymous source close to the Duke saying you're unstable. Alara's blood went cold. What? And this one suggests the marriage is troubled, that you're acting out for attention. Catherine's expression was grim. Someone wants you destroyed, Alara, and they're using your own household against you. That's impossible. The staff are loyal to Rowan, not you, Margaret finished gently. She'd come in behind Catherine, her face troubled. You've been kind to them, but at the end of the day, they've served him for years. You're the interloper. The word stung because it was true. Alara had been at Blackthorn Estate for 5 months. 5 months of trying to build something resembling a life. But she was still an outsider in her own home, her own marriage. We need to find out who's talking, Vivian said. Before this gets worse. It got worse. 3 days later, Alara received a letter. No return address, expensive paper, neat handwriting. Duchess Alara, your little school is quite charming. How noble of you to pretend to care about the lower classes. But we both know what you really are, a social climber who trapped a duke with debts and desperation. Did you really think you could buy respectability by playing benefactor? Some advice? Know your place. Fade into the background where you belong, or the truth about your family will become far more interesting to the papers than your charitable ventures. A concerned friend. Alara's hands shook as she read it, then read it again. The threat was clear. Someone knew about her father's debts, and worse, they were willing to use that information to destroy her. She showed the letter to Rowan that night. He'd been coming home earlier since their confrontation about the school, though they still barely spoke. But when Alara appeared at his study door, letter in hand, something in her face made him stand immediately. What happened? She handed him the letter without a word. His expression darkened as he read. When did this arrive? This afternoon. Have there been others? No, just this one. Rowan set the letter down carefully, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. Do you have any idea who sent it? Someone who knows about my family's situation. Someone with access to society gossip. Alara wrapped her arms around herself. That could be anyone. Not anyone. Rowan moved around the desk. Someone threatened you, Alara. That narrows the field. To what? Every woman who hates that I married you? Every man who thinks women shouldn't be educated? Her voice cracked. I'm trying to do something good, and someone wants to destroy me for it. No one is going to destroy you. The certainty in his voice made her look up. Rowan was standing close now, closer than he'd been since their wedding night. His eyes were dark, intense, fixed on her face. I'll find out who sent this, he said, and I'll handle it. How? That's not your concern. It is my concern. Alara's frustration boiled over. It's my name they're dragging through the mud. My school they're attacking. You can't just swoop in and fix things like I'm a problem to be managed. That's not what I'm doing. Isn't it? She laughed bitterly. You've ignored me for months, Rowan. Treated me like furniture. Now suddenly you care because someone sent a nasty letter? His jaw clenched. I've always cared. You have a strange way of showing it. I know. The admission seemed to cost him. I know I haven't been fair to you. That's an understatement. Alara, no. She stepped back, needing distance. You don't get to be noble now. You don't get to protect me after months of pretending I don't exist. I'm not one of your problems to solve, Rowan. I'm your wife. The word hung between them, heavy with all the things they'd never said. I'm aware, Rowan said quietly. Are you? Because most of the time I think you forget I'm even here. Something flashed across his face, pain maybe, or guilt. I don't forget. His voice was rough. I've never forgotten. Then why? Because it's easier. The words exploded out of him. It's easier to keep distance, to stay separate than to... He stopped, turned away. Then to what? Alara pressed. Then to let myself care. He said it so quietly she almost didn't hear. I'm not good at this, Alara. At marriage, at closeness, at any of it. I thought if I kept things simple, clinical, I could avoid... Avoid what? Failing. He looked at her then, and the raw honesty in his eyes stole her breath. I thought if I didn't try, I couldn't fail. But I was wrong. I failed anyway. Alara felt something crack in her chest. This was the most her husband had ever said to her, the most real he'd ever been. Why did you marry me? She asked. The truth, Rowan. He was silent for a long moment, then, I needed an heir. That part was true, but I could have married anyone. There were plenty of options. Then why me? Because you were honest. His mouth twisted. Your father came to me with the debts, the situation. He didn't hide it, didn't try to dress it up. And when I met you, you looked me in the eye and told me you'd do your duty if I did mine. No illusions, no pretense. And that appealed to you. Yes. He ran a hand through his hair. I'd been burned before, by someone who lied, who pretended to be something she wasn't. I thought marrying someone who was upfront about the arrangement would be safer. Who was she? Alara asked. The woman who lied. Rowan's expression shuddered. It doesn't matter. It clearly does. She was engaged to my brother. The words came out flat. Before he died. She claimed to love him, grieved publicly. Then 3 months later, I found out she'd been sleeping with my business partner the entire time. She didn't care about my brother. She cared about the title, the money. When he died and I inherited, she tried to transfer her affections to me. Alara felt sick. What did you do? Sent her away, cut off the business partner, decided I was done with love and all its lies. He looked at her. So when your father approached me with a clean transaction, no pretense of affection, just mutual benefit, it seemed perfect. Except I'm a person, not a transaction. I know that now. Do you? Alara moved closer. Because knowing it and acting like it are different things, Rowan. I'm trying. Are you? Yes. His frustration matched hers. Why do you think I've been coming home earlier? Why do you think I told you to keep the school open? I'm trying, Alara. but I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be what you need. I don't need you to be anything except honest. Her voice softened despite her anger. I don't need grand gestures or declarations. I just need you to see me, to talk to me like I matter. You do matter. Then prove it. The challenge hung in the air. Rowan stared at her, something working in his expression. Then he moved closer, so close she could feel the heat of him. I'll find who sent that letter, he said. I'll protect you, Alara, whether you want me to or not. That's not what I... But he was already walking past her, out the door, leaving her standing alone in his study with more questions than answers. Rowan kept his word. Over the next week, he became a presence in Alara's life in a way he'd never been before. He started taking breakfast with her, asked about the school, attended a planning meeting with Vivian and the others. The women were shocked into silence when he walked into the small office, tall and imposing in his perfectly tailored coat. Ladies, he said with a slight nod. Then to Alara, may I speak with you? We were just finishing, Vivian said quickly, gathering papers. She shot Alara a look that clearly said we need to talk about this later before hurting the others out. When they were alone, Rowan closed the door. I found your letter writer, he said without preamble. Alara's heart jumped. Who? Lady Pemberton. His expression was grim. She's been orchestrating the campaign against you. The articles, the rumors, everything. But why? I barely know her. Because you married me. Rowan pulled out a chair, gestured for her to sit. When she did, he remained standing, hands clasped behind his back. Her daughter was one of the women my mother tried to match me with before she died. Lady Pemberton had expectations. When I married you instead, she took it as a personal insult. That's insane. That's society. He looked tired. She's been feeding stories to journalists, paying servants to spy on you, building a case to make you look unstable or inappropriate. Alara felt cold. The anonymous sources in the articles paid off. I've already dealt with them. At her sharp look, he clarified, I didn't hurt anyone. I just made it clear that continued cooperation with Lady Pemberton would result in consequences they wouldn't enjoy. What kind of consequences? The kind that involved their employers learning about their activities. His mouth was a hard line. I also had a conversation with Lady Pemberton herself. What did you say? That if she continues her campaign against you, I'll make sure every door in society closes to her. That I'll expose her gambling debts. Yes, she has those too, and her son's illegitimate child in the country. Alara's eyes widened. You didn't. I did. He met her gaze steadily. No one threatens my wife. The words sent a shock through her system. My wife. Said with possession, with protectiveness, with something that sounded almost like feeling. She'll hate me even more now, Alara said. Probably. But she'll do it quietly. Rowan pulled out the other chair, sat. They were closer now than they'd been in months, close enough that Alara could see the faint shadows under his eyes. I'm sorry this happened. You shouldn't have to deal with this kind of viciousness. It's not your fault. Isn't it? You're only a target because you married me. I'm a target because I'm a woman doing something they don't approve of, Alara corrected. Lady Pemberton is just an excuse. If it wasn't her, it would be someone else. Rowan studied her. You're stronger than I thought. Is that a compliment or an insult? A compliment. Something shifted in his expression. When we married, I thought you were fragile. Someone who'd need protection, management. But you're not, are you? No. Alara lifted her chin. I never was. I'm beginning to see that. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Alara couldn't name. Then Rowan stood. I should go. I have business in the city. Of course. She tried not to let the disappointment show. Thank you for handling Lady Pemberton. You don't have to thank me. He moved toward the door, paused. Alara? Yes? The school. It's good work, what you're doing. I should have said that before. Then he was gone, and Alara sat alone, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. The attacks didn't stop completely, but they quieted. Lady Pemberton still spread poison when she could, but it was muted now, whispered instead of shouted. The newspapers moved on to other scandals. Alara's school continued to grow. By month 7 of their marriage, enrollment had doubled. The small building was bursting at the seams. They needed more space, more teachers, more funding. Alara was reviewing budgets in the estate library when Rowan found her. "You're always working," he said from the doorway. She looked up, surprised. He was home early again. It was becoming a pattern. "There's a lot to do." "The school?" "Among other things." She gestured at the papers spread across the desk. "We're running out of room. I'm trying to figure out if we can afford a second location." Rowan crossed to the desk, studied the numbers. "This is your personal allowance?" "Yes. Why?" "You're using all of it for the school." Alara shrugged. "I don't need much else." "Alara." His voice carried a strange note. "You're entitled to spend money on yourself. Clothes, jewelry, whatever you want." "I have clothes. I have jewelry." She looked at him, confused. "I'd rather use the money for something that matters." He stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Then he pulled out a paper from his jacket pocket, set it on the desk. "What's this?" Alara asked. "A deed to a building 3 blocks from your current school. Twice the size, better location." He met her eyes. "It's yours. For the school." Alara's mouth fell open. "I can't. That's too much." "Consider it an investment." "In what?" "In you." He said it simply, like it was obvious. "You've proven the school works. It deserves proper support." Tears pricked Alara's eyes. She blinked them back furiously. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I want to." Rowan shifted his weight, looking oddly uncertain. "Because you were right. I've been failing at this marriage. I'm trying to do better." "By throwing money at me?" "By supporting what you care about." His voice roughened. "I don't know how to talk about feelings, Alara. I don't know how to be close, but I can do this. I can give you the resources to succeed." It wasn't a declaration of love, wasn't even particularly romantic, but it was something. A step. An effort. "Thank you," Alara said quietly. "This means more than you know." Rowan nodded, started to leave, then stopped, turned back. "There's a gala next week, the Thornbury Ball. I have to attend." He paused. "Would you come with me?" "As your wife?" "As my wife," he confirmed. "Not just for appearances, as my actual wife. I'd like to introduce you properly, show them that we're not a disaster," Alara supplied, lips quirking. "Not what they think," he finished. Something like humor flickered in his eyes. Though disaster might be accurate. She laughed despite herself. "Are you sure? I'm still scandal material." "Good. I'm tired of being boring." The joke was so unexpected that Alara actually smiled. A real smile. The first one she'd given her husband in months. "All right," she said. "I'll go." "Good." Rowan looked almost relieved. "I'll have the carriage ready at 8. After he left, Alara sat with the deed in her hands, feeling like the ground beneath her had shifted again. Her husband was trying. Actually trying. It was terrifying how much that meant to her. The Thornbury Ball was exactly as opulent and exhausting as Alara expected. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and champagne. Women in silk and diamonds clustered in groups, their fans moving in practiced rhythm as they gossiped. Men gathered near the card rooms, discussing politics and business. Alara wore deep sapphire, a gown that made her eyes look darker. She'd chosen it deliberately, not the soft pastels expected of young wives, but something bolder, a statement. Rowan appeared at her side as they entered, offered his arm. "Ready?" he asked. "No." She took his arm anyway. "Let's get this over with." They moved through the crowd, and Alara felt every eye turn toward them. Whispers followed in their wake like a physical thing. "Ignore them," Rowan murmured. "Easy for you to say they're not calling you unstable." "They're calling me whipped." She blinked up at him. "What?" "Apparently I've been domesticated by my reformer wife." His mouth quirked. "There's a betting pool about whether you'll have me attending your school meetings in an apron." Despite herself, Alara laughed. "That's ridiculous." "Completely." His hand covered hers on his arm, the touch brief but deliberate. But let them talk. I told you, I'm done being boring. They found Vivian and Catherine near the refreshment table. Both women looked relieved to see them. Thank the stars, Catherine said. I've been dodging Lady Pemberton for 20 minutes. Where is she? Rowan asked, scanning the room. Northwest corner, poisoning minds as usual. Vivian sipped her champagne. She's telling everyone Alara's school is a front for something scandalous. The theories range from political insurgency to a secret brothel. A brothel, Alara repeated flatly. I know. It's creative, at least. Rowan's expression darkened. Excuse me. He left before Alara could stop him. Where's he going? Catherine asked. They got their answer when Rowan crossed directly to Lady Pemberton's circle. The women around her went silent as he approached, their expressions shifting from surprise to alarm. Whatever he said was quiet enough that Alara couldn't hear, but Lady Pemberton's face went white, then red, then white again. She sputtered something. Rowan cut her off with a single gesture. Then he turned and walked away, leaving the older woman looking like she'd been struck. What just happened? Vivian breathed. Rowan returned to them, expression neutral. She won't be a problem anymore. What did you say to her? Alara demanded. Just the truth. He took a glass of champagne from a passing server. That her campaign against you has been noted, documented, and that any further attacks will be met with legal action for slander. Also, that I'm prepared to testify publicly about her attempts to manipulate me into marrying her daughter. Rowan, she started this war, Alara. I'm ending it. His eyes met hers. No one hurts my wife without consequences. There it was again. My wife. Possessive, protective, real. Alara's throat tightened. Before she could respond, the music shifted. The opening strains of a waltz filled the ballroom. Dance with me, Rowan said. Not a question. But he was already leading her to the floor. They hadn't touched like this since their wedding, hadn't been close, hadn't moved together. Alara expected awkwardness. Instead, Rowan pulled her into position with practiced ease, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers. They moved into the waltz, and Alara was shocked to find he was an excellent dancer. You never mentioned you could dance, she said. You never asked. His eyes held hers. We've never asked each other much of anything, have we? No. The admission hurt. We haven't. Ask me something now. Alara's mind went blank. Then, why are you doing this? Really doing this? The building, the public defense, this dance. Why now? Rowan was quiet for several turns. Then, because I was afraid. Of what? Of you. He said it so quietly she almost missed it. Of what it would mean if I let myself care. After my brother died, after what happened with Catherine, that was her name, the woman who lied, I decided caring was dangerous, that distance was safer. And now? Now I realize distance is just another kind of danger. His hand tightened at her waist. I was so busy protecting myself that I didn't see what I was doing to you. And when I finally looked, really looked, I saw someone stronger than I'd ever be. Someone who took an impossible situation and made something beautiful from it. Alara's eyes stung. I'm not that strong. You are. You're the strongest person I know. The music swelled around them. Other couples swirled past, but Alara only saw Rowan, his dark eyes intense and focused entirely on her, his hands warm and steady, the way he held her like she mattered. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Neither do I. His mouth quirked. We'll figure it out together. It wasn't a promise of love, wasn't poetry or romance, but it was honest, real, a beginning. The waltz ended. They stood on the floor, still holding each other, while applause rippled through the ballroom. Then someone screamed. The sound cut through the music like a knife. Heads turned, gasps erupted. Near the entrance, a man stood with a paper in his hand. He was shouting, his voice carrying across the sudden silence. The Duchess of Blackthorn, read the truth about her corruption, her manipulation, her lies. Alara's blood went cold. Rowan stepped in front of her immediately, his body a shield. Who the hell are you? A journalist. The man waved the paper. With evidence of the Duchess's illegal activities, she's been embezzling from her husband, using his money to... That's a lie, Rowan cut him off, voice like ice. Is it? I have documents, financial records, proof that she's been funneling money into secret accounts, fabricated documents. Rowan moved forward, and the man actually backed up. Put there by someone with an agenda. The truth, Rowan said, voice rising now, is that my wife runs a school for disadvantaged women. A legal, legitimate educational institution. Whatever proof you think you have is forged. I have witnesses, sources inside your household. Alara's stomach turned. Inside their household. Someone on staff had betrayed them. Rowan must have realized it too because his expression turned murderous. Get out. I have a right. You have no rights here. This is a private event. Leave now, or I'll have you thrown out. 2 footmen appeared, moved toward the journalist, but he wasn't done. Ask her about the money, he shouted as they grabbed his arms. Ask her where it really goes. Ask her why she's so desperate to help women no one cares about. Maybe because she's one of them. A social climber who trapped a duke. The words echoed across the ballroom. Dead silence. Then the whispers started. Low, spreading like fire. Alara felt the weight of every eye in the room, judging her, condemning her. Rowan turned, looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something that made her heart stop. Doubt. Just for a second. A flicker. But it was there. He didn't believe the journalist's lies, but he was questioning, wondering if there was more she hadn't told him. The fragile trust they'd been building cracked. Rowan, she started, but he'd already turned back to the crowd, his face a mask of cold fury. This event is over, he announced. Everyone out. Chaos erupted. The journalist was being dragged away, still shouting. Guests were gathering belongings, whispering frantically. The orchestra had stopped playing. Alara stood frozen in the center of it all, watching her husband's back, feeling everything they'd just started to build come crashing down around them. Vivian appeared at her side. Alara, we need to go. I can't. I have to explain. Not here. Not now. Vivian gripped her arm. Come on. She let herself be led out through a side door, away from the wreckage of the evening. But as they left, Alara looked back once. Rowan was standing alone in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by destruction, his expression carved from stone. And she knew with horrible certainty, that whatever fragile thing had been growing between them had just been poisoned. The question was whether it would survive. Alara didn't sleep that night. She sat in her chambers, still wearing the sapphire gown, staring at nothing while her mind replayed that moment over and over. The flicker of doubt in Rowan's eyes, the way he'd turned away from her. She'd seen that look before, in her father's face when the creditors came. In the eyes of society, women who'd decided she wasn't worth their time. The look that said, "You're not what I thought. You're a disappointment." A knock came at dawn. Quiet, hesitant. Come in, Alara said, her voice rough from unshed tears. Mrs. Barrow entered, her face pale. Your Grace, the Duke requests your presence in his study. Now? Yes, ma'am. Alara stood, bones aching like she'd been beaten. Tell him I'll be there shortly. She changed into a day dress, fingers clumsy on the buttons, splashed cold water on her face, looked at herself in the mirror and saw a stranger, hollow-eyed, drawn, nothing like the confident woman who'd walked into that ballroom hours ago. The walk to Rowan's study felt like a march to execution. He was standing by the window when she entered, hands clasped behind his back, didn't turn when she closed the door. Sit, he said. I'd rather stand. Alara, just say whatever you need to say. Her voice came out harder than intended. Get it over with. Rowan finally turned. He looked worse than she felt, shirt wrinkled, hair disheveled, shadows under his eyes that spoke of a sleepless night. I had my solicitor go through every financial record, he said. Every transaction related to the school, your personal accounts, everything. Alara's chest tightened. And? The documents that journalist had were forgeries. Clumsy ones, actually. Anyone who looked closely could see they'd been altered. So you believe me? I never didn't believe you. His voice was quiet. I was angry at the situation, not you. That's not what I saw in your eyes. Rowan flinched. What you saw was me realizing how easily someone could manipulate both of us. How vulnerable we are to this kind of attack. He moved toward her. Elara, someone in this house is feeding information to our enemies. Someone we trust. I know. I've questioned every servant. No one admits to anything. Of course they don't. Elara wrapped her arms around herself. Whoever it is won't just confess because you ask nicely. Then what do you suggest? I don't know. The words burst out of her. I don't know how to fight this, Rowan. I'm trying to do something good, and someone keeps twisting it into something ugly. Maybe I should just... Don't. He crossed to her in 3 strides. Don't you dare say you should stop. Why not? It's clearly causing nothing but problems. It's causing problems because it's working. His hands gripped her shoulders. You're changing lives, Elara. Giving women opportunities they'd never have otherwise. That terrifies certain people. So they're trying to destroy you before you become too powerful to stop. I'm not powerful. You are powerful. His eyes burned into hers. You're more powerful than you realize. And that's exactly why they're afraid. Elara stared at him, something hot and painful building in her throat. You really believe that? Yes. He said it without hesitation. I'm sorry about last night, about the doubt you saw. It wasn't about you. It was about me failing to protect you. I don't need you to protect me. I know, but I want to anyway. His hand slid down to her arms. Let me help you fight this, Elara. Let me be your partner instead of your obstacle. The offer hung between them, fragile and real. I don't know how to trust you, Elara whispered. Every time I think we're making progress, something happens, and I see that wall go back up in your eyes. I'm trying to tear it down. Are you? Or are you just scared of looking like a fool in front of society? The accusation hit its mark. Rowan's jaw clenched. That's not fair. Isn't it? You didn't start caring until people were talking about us, until your reputation was on the line. That's not true. Then why now? Elara pulled away from him. Why suddenly want to be partners after months of treating me like I'm invisible? Because I was wrong, his voice rose. Because I spent months trying not to care and it didn't work. Because when I saw you standing in that ballroom last night being attacked, all I wanted was to burn the whole place down to protect you. The raw honesty in his voice stopped her cold. I'm not good at this, Rowan continued, quieter now. At feelings, at vulnerability. My brother was the charming one. I was always the cold, practical one. I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn, Elara's voice cracked, because I can't keep being married to a ghost. I know. He looked at her with something like desperation. Help me. Tell me what you need. What did she need? Elara thought about it. About the months of loneliness, the cold nights, the feeling of being utterly alone in a house full of people. I need honesty, she said finally. Not grand gestures or pretty words, just truth. When you're angry, tell me. When you're scared, tell me. Stop hiding behind walls and let me see you. Even if what you see isn't worth seeing, especially then. She stepped closer. I didn't marry you expecting perfection, Rowan. I married you expecting a partner. Give me that, and we might have a chance. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. He took a breath. Then here's truth. I'm terrified. Of failing you. Of turning into my father. He was cold, distant, made my mother miserable. I swore I'd never marry because I didn't want to repeat that. But I needed an heir, so I convinced myself a business arrangement would be different. And then you got a wife who wouldn't stay in her box, Elara said. And then I got you. Something almost like a smile crossed his face. Stubborn, brilliant, infuriating you. Is that a compliment? Yes. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. I don't know how to love, Elara. I don't know if I'm even capable of it, but I know I want to try. With you. The words settled over her like a blanket. It wasn't a declaration of love, wasn't even close, but it was honest, and that was what she'd asked for. Then we try, she said quietly. Together. Rowan squeezed her hand. Together. The moment was interrupted by another knock. Hastings appeared, his expression grim. Your Grace, there's a situation. Machine. The situation was a mob. They'd gathered outside the school, 30, maybe 40 people, carrying signs and shouting. Alara stood at the window of her office, staring down at them in disbelief. When did this start? She asked Margaret, who'd arrived breathless with the news. An hour ago. They're saying the school is corrupting their daughters, that you're teaching dangerous ideas. We're teaching reading and arithmetic. They don't care about facts. Vivian pushed through the door, Catherine and Diana behind her. Someone's organized this. Look at the signs. They're all professionally made, same lettering. She was right. The signs were too uniform, too coordinated. Close the school. No education for immoral women. The Duchess corrupts our city. Lady Pemberton? Alara guessed. Or whoever's behind the journalist, Catherine said. This is escalating fast. We need to close for the day, Diana said. Get the students out safely. No. The word came out before Alara could think. We're not closing. Alara, if we close, they win. They'll keep attacking until we shut down permanently. She turned from the window. We stand our ground. That's dangerous, Margaret warned. Mobs don't listen to reason. Then we make them listen. Vivian grabbed her arm. What are you planning? I'm going to talk to them. That's insane. Probably. Alara pulled free. But I'm done hiding, done letting other people define what I do and who I am. She was halfway to the door when Rowan appeared in it. What the hell do you think you're doing? He demanded. My job. There's a mob outside. I'm aware. And you're just going to walk out there? Yes. Alara met his eyes. You told me I was powerful. Let me prove it. Not like this. Not by getting yourself killed. I won't. You don't know that. His voice rose. These people are angry, organized, potentially dangerous. You can't just reason with them. So what do you suggest? Hide? Give up? I suggest you let me handle it. Alara laughed, bitter. Handle it how? By threatening them? By using your title to make them scatter? That won't solve anything. They'll just come back. At least you'll be safe. I don't want to be safe. The words exploded out of her. I want to fight for something that matters. I want to stand up and say this school, these women, they're worth protecting. Even if it's dangerous, even if it's hard. Rowan stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language. You could die, he said quietly. We're all dying, Rowan. Some of us just choose to live first. The words hung in the air. Then Rowan did something completely unexpected. He stepped aside. Fine, he said. But I'm coming with you. You don't have to. Yes, I do. His eyes held hers. You asked me to be your partner. Partners don't let each other walk into danger alone. Something warm bloomed in Alara's chest. All right, she said. Together. They walked down the stairs side by side. The noise from outside grew louder. Angry voices, chanting, the sound of something being thrown against the building. At the door, Rowan paused, looked at her. Whatever happens out there, I'm with you. Understand? Alara nodded. He opened the door. The mob's roar was deafening. People surged forward, their faces twisted with rage and righteousness. Alara stepped out onto the front steps, Rowan beside her, and the crowd faltered. The Duke and Duchess of Blackthorn, standing together, united. It wasn't what they'd expected. Listen to me, Alara's voice cut through the noise, not shouting, but clear and strong. I know you're angry. I know you've been told lies about this school, about what we do here. You corrupt our daughters, someone shouted. We teach them to read. Alara looked directly at the man who'd spoken. We teach them mathematics, basic accounting, skills they can use to support themselves. Is education corruption? You teach them to be unnatural, to rise above their station. I teach them to have choices. She stepped forward, and Rowan moved with her. The women who come here aren't criminals. They're seamstresses, laundresses, servants. They work hard, raise families, contribute to this city. All we do is give them tools to do those things better. You fill their heads with dangerous ideas. What ideas? Alara challenged. That they deserve dignity, that they have worth, that their minds matter? Women should know their place. And what place is that? She was gaining confidence now, feeding off the crowd's energy. In poverty, in ignorance, dying young because they can't read a medicine label or calculate fair wages, some of the crowd shifted uncomfortably. This school isn't about revolution, Alara continued. It's about survival, about giving women the knowledge they need to protect themselves and their families. If that threatens you, ask yourself why. Because it's not natural, a woman screamed. Women are meant to be modest, obedient. I am a duchess, Alara cut her off. I was educated. I studied literature, mathematics, history. Does that make me unnatural? Silence. Or is it only wrong when poor women learn? She pressed. Only corruption when the powerless gain knowledge? The woman's face reddened. That's different. How? Explain to me how. But the woman couldn't. None of them could. Alara saw the moment the mob's certainty cracked, saw doubt creep into faces, questions forming. Then a voice from the back shouted, "She's a liar, a manipulator. Don't listen to her." A man pushed through the crowd, tall, well-dressed, familiar. Alara's blood went cold. It was Richard Thornberry, Rowan's former business partner, the man who'd been sleeping with Catherine while engaged to Rowan's brother. "What are you doing here?" Rowan's voice was ice. "Exposing the truth." Richard smiled, poisonous. "About you, about your scheming wife, about this whole charade." "Get out of here, Thornberry." "Why?" "Afraid of what I'll say?" Richard addressed the crowd now. "You want to know who's really behind this school? It's not charity, it's revenge. The Duchess is using your daughters to build power, to create a following loyal only to her." "That's insane," Alara said. "Is it? You married into one of the most powerful families in the country, immediately started gathering influence, building alliances with women across the city. What's your endgame, Duchess? What are you really after?" The crowd was listening, doubt flooding back. "I'm trying to help people," Alara said. "No, you're trying to build an empire." Richard's eyes glittered. "And you're using the Duke's money, his name, his reputation to do it, just like Catherine used his brother." Rowan moved so fast Alara barely saw it. One moment he was beside her, the next he had Richard by the collar, slammed against the building wall. "Don't you dare speak her name," Rowan snarled. "Don't you dare compare them." "Why not? They're both social climbers who—" Rowan's fist connected with Richard's jaw. The crack echoed across the suddenly silent crowd. "Rowan!" Alara grabbed his arm. "Stop!" But he wasn't stopping. He hit Richard again, fury and years of betrayal fueling every blow. "You slept with her!" Rowan shouted. "While my brother was dying, while he trusted you, you were—" Richard spat blood. "Your brother was weak. Catherine deserved better." Another punch. Richard's nose crunched. "Rowan, please!" Alara pulled at him desperately. This isn't helping. But he was beyond hearing, beyond reason. All the walls he'd built were crumbling, and behind them was rage. It took 3 men from the crowd to pull Rowan off. He fought them, still trying to reach Richard, his face transformed by fury. "She's nothing like Catherine," he roared. "Nothing. Alara is worth 10 of you, 10 of her, 10 of everyone who's ever—" "Rowan!" Alara stepped in front of him, put her hands on his face, forcing him to look at her. "Stop, please, stop." His eyes focused on her gradually, wild, desperate, full of things he'd never said. "He called you. He compared you." "I know." Her voice was steady despite her shaking hands. "But beating him won't fix it. He's been behind everything, the articles, the journalists, the forged documents." Rowan was breathing hard. "I had my people investigate. It's all him, trying to destroy us because he hates that I'm happy, that I found—" He stopped, looked at her. "Found what?" Alara whispered. "Something real," he finished. "Something worth protecting." The words fell into the silence like stones into water. The crowd stood frozen, witnesses to something far more intimate than a public brawl. Rowan, the cold Duke of Blackthorn, stripped bare, vulnerable, human. Richard laughed from where he lay. How touching, but it doesn't change the facts. She married you for money, built this school with your fortune. She's using you, Hale, just like, enough. The shout didn't come from Rowan. It came from one of the women in the crowd, a laundress Alara recognized from the school. I know the Duchess, the woman said, stepping forward. I'm one of her students. She doesn't use anyone. She teaches us, helps us. My daughter died last year because I couldn't read the medicine bottle, gave her the wrong dose. Her voice cracked. The Duchess taught me to read. Now my other children won't die the same way. That's what this school does. It saves lives. Another woman spoke up. She got me hired at a shop, taught me to keep accounts. She helped my sister leave a man who beat her, another added, taught her a trade so she could support herself. One by one, women stepped forward, students, mothers, sisters, each with a story of how the school had changed their lives. The mob's anger transformed into something else. Shame, maybe, or confusion. Richard struggled to his feet, wiping blood from his mouth. You're all deluded. She's manipulated you into... No one manipulated us, the first woman said firmly. We see the truth. You're the liar. I have documents. Fake documents, Rowan said, his voice cold again. Controlled. I've already exposed them, and I'm prepared to expose you, Thornberry. Your debts, your affairs, the business deals you've sabotaged. All of it. Richard's face went pale. You wouldn't. Try me. Rowan stepped forward, and the crowd parted for him. You spent months attacking my wife, spreading lies, forging evidence, organizing this circus. I'm done being patient. You can't prove anything. I can prove everything. Rowan pulled papers from his jacket. Financial records linking you to the journalist, correspondence with Lady Pemberton, payments to servants in my household. The last part hit Alara like a blow. Servants. Betrayal from inside Blackthorn Estate. Who? She asked. Rowan's expression was grim. Mrs. Barrow, the housekeeper, the woman Alara had tried so hard to win over. She's been in Thornberry's employ for months, Rowan continued, feeding him information, stealing correspondence, forging documents with access to my seal. Alara felt sick. I've already dismissed her, Rowan said quietly, and filed charges. Richard's confidence crumbled. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Rowan handed the papers to one of the men who'd pulled him off Richard. These are copies. The originals are with my solicitor, along with a full accounting of your crimes. You have two choices. Leave the city tonight or face trial for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. You can't. I'm the Duke of Blackthorn. Rowan's voice was steel. I absolutely can. Choose now. Richard looked in the crowd, at Alara, at Rowan's unyielding face. Then he spat at Rowan's feet and limped away. The tension broke like a fever. The crowd began to disperse, murmuring among themselves. Some of the students' mothers approached Alara, apologizing, explaining they'd been lied to. She accepted their apologies numbly, still processing everything. When the street was finally clear, Alara turned to Rowan. His knuckles were bloody, his shirt was torn, his hair was wild. He looked more real than she'd ever seen him. You defended me, she said. Of course I did. You called me worth protecting. You are. He stepped closer. Alara, Whatever he was about to say was cut off by Vivian bursting through the school door. Inside now, both of you! They followed her up to the office, where Margaret was standing by the window, face white. What's wrong? Alara asked. This. Margaret handed her a letter. It was brief, official, devastating. The Board of City Ordinances has received numerous complaints about the Whitmore School for Women. An official investigation will commence immediately. All operations must cease pending review. Failure to comply will result in legal action. Alara read it twice, 3 times. They can't do this, she whispered. They can, Catherine said quietly. She'd appeared in the doorway. And they will. Someone powerful is pushing for it. Who? Does it matter? Vivian's voice was bitter. The result is the same. We have to close. No. Alara crumpled the letter. No, we don't. Alara, it's an official order based on lies. We fight it. How? Margaret asked. We don't have the political power. Then we get it. Alara looked at Rowan. You know people, powerful people. Can you help? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I can try. But Alara, this isn't a small fight anymore. If we push back against the board, we're challenging the entire power structure of the city. People with resources, connections, the ability to destroy us completely. So we let them win? I'm not saying that. I'm saying be prepared for war. Alara thought about the women downstairs, the students who'd spoken up for her, the lives being changed one lesson at a time. Then we go to war, she said. Rowan studied her face, then nodded slowly. All right. He looked at the others. We'll need allies, support from other noble families, backing from merchants and business owners. We make this about more than just the school. We make it about the future of the city. That's ambitious, Diana said. So is shutting down an educational institution based on lies. Rowan's expression was hard. If they want to fight, we'll give them one. Over the next week, they built their campaign. Rowan called in favors from every connection he had, fellow lords who owed him money or influence, merchants whose businesses he'd invested in, even a few politicians who saw the political advantage in supporting education reform. Alara and the women organized the students and their families, gathered testimonials, documented success stories, prepared a presentation for the board. It was exhausting, brutal. They worked 18-hour days, barely sleeping, but slowly they built something. The night before the board hearing, Alara couldn't sleep. She paced her chambers, mind racing through their arguments, their evidence, all the ways it could go wrong. A knock came at midnight. Rowan stood in the doorway, looking as exhausted as she felt. Can't sleep either? He asked. No. He entered, closed the door. They stood in her room, really stood together, for the first time since their wedding night. Whatever happens tomorrow, Rowan said quietly, I want you to know I'm proud of you, of what you've built. We haven't won yet. You've already won. He stepped closer. You took an impossible situation and created something beautiful, changed lives. That's victory, Alara, regardless of what the board decides. Her throat tightened. And if they shut us down? Then we fight harder. Appeal. Take it to higher courts. I'm not letting them destroy this. Why? She needed to hear it. Why does it matter so much to you? Rowan was quiet for a moment. Then, because it matters to you. And somewhere along the way, what matters to you started mattering to me more than anything else. The admission hung in the air. Alara reached for his hand, found it, held it. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me. Finally seeing me. Rowan's fingers tightened around hers. I see you, Alara. I see you, and you're... He stopped, struggled with words. You're everything I didn't know I needed, he finished quietly. It wasn't a love confession, wasn't poetry, but it was honest, real, them. Alara stepped closer, standing on her toes, and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft, tentative. Nothing like their wedding kiss or the mechanical encounters in darkness. This was a choice, a beginning. When they pulled apart, Rowan rested his forehead against hers. Whatever happens tomorrow, he said, we face it together. Together, Alara agreed. The board hearing was held in the Grand Council chamber, a room designed to intimidate, with vaulted ceilings, marble floors, and a raised platform where the board members sat like judges. Alara entered with Rowan at her side, Vivian and the others behind them. Students and their families filled the gallery, a silent show of support. The board was composed of 7 men, all older, all wealthy, all looking at Alara like she was a particularly troublesome insect. Lord Carstairs, the chairman, banged his gavel. This hearing concerns the Whitmore School for Women. The board has received numerous complaints alleging improper conduct, financial irregularities, and moral corruption. All lies, Alara said clearly. You'll have your chance to speak, Duchess. Carstairs' tone was patronizing. First, we'll hear from those who filed complaints. The next hour was brutal. Lady Pemberton testified that the school was a front for immoral activity. The journalist, who'd somehow avoided consequences, claimed Alara was embezzling. Several anonymous concerned citizens described vague but alarming activities. No evidence, no facts, just insinuation and fear. Finally, Carstairs turned to Alara. Duchess, your defense? Alara stood. Her hands were shaking, so she clasped them together. The accusations against my school are false. Every penny spent is documented, every student accounted for, every lesson approved by certified teachers. She pulled out records, handed them to a clerk. These are our financial statements, our curriculum, testimonials from students and families. Testimonials can be fabricated, one board member said. Then ask the women yourselves. Alara gestured to the gallery. They're here. Ask them what this school has done for their lives. We don't need to hear from... Why not? Rowan cut in, standing. If you're judging the school, shouldn't you hear from the people it serves? Your Grace, this is irregular. So is closing an educational institution based on gossip. Rowan's voice was hard. Let them speak. Carstairs hesitated, then nodded. One by one, women stood and told their stories. The laundress, whose children now lived because she could read. The seamstress who'd started her own business. The widow who'd learned accounting and saved her family from poverty. Real stories. Real lives. Real change. The board members shifted uncomfortably. When the last woman finished, Carstairs cleared his throat. While these testimonials are touching, they don't address the fundamental issue. The school operates in a district zoned for commercial use, not education. It's a violation of city ordinances. Alara's heart sank. A technicality. They were using a technicality. Then we'll move locations, she said, find a properly zoned building. The cost would be prohibitive. I'll pay for it, Rowan said. And what happens when you tire of this project? Another board member asked. When the Duchess's interest wanes, these women will be left dependent on a school that could close at any moment. It won't close, Alara said firmly. You can't guarantee that. Yes, I can. She pulled out a document she and Vivian had prepared the night before. I'm establishing the Whitmore School as an independent charitable trust. It will have its own board of directors, its own funding sources, its own legal standing. Even if I disappear tomorrow, the school continues. Silence. Carstairs took the document, read it. His expression soured. This is highly unusual. So is trying to shut down a school that's helping hundreds of women, Rowan said. Let's call it even. The board members conferred in whispers. Finally, Carstairs banged his gavel. The board will take this matter under advisement. We'll deliver our decision in 1 week. 1 week? Alara protested. Our students, 1 week, Duchess. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel fell again, final and damning. Alara stood there, feeling like she'd been punched. They'd done everything right, presented evidence, gathered testimonials, offered solutions, and it still might not be enough. Outside the chamber, Vivian pulled her aside. That was incredible, she said. The trust document, the testimonials. It might not matter. Alara's voice was hollow. They've already decided. I could see it in their faces. Then we make them undecide. Catherine appeared, determined. We go public, print our own articles, get our story out there. That could backfire, Margaret warned. Everything could backfire, Diana said, but doing nothing definitely will. They were still arguing when a man approached. Young, well-dressed, unfamiliar. Duchess Alara? He said. Yes? I'm Thomas Graves. I work for the Courier. He pulled out a notepad. I'd like to write about your school. The real story, not the lies. Alara stared at him. Why? Because my sister was one of your students. His expression was earnest. She died 3 months ago in childbirth. But before she died, she told me the school saved her life, taught her to read, to think, to believe she mattered. I want people to know what you're doing. Hope flickered in Alara's chest. All right, she said. Let's tell them. Thomas Graves's article ran 3 days later. It was front page. detailed, passionate, honest. It told the story of the school, the students, the opposition. It didn't shy away from the controversy, but it presented facts alongside the fear. By evening, half the city was talking about it. Support flooded in, donations, offers to help, letters of encouragement, but so did opposition. More articles attacking Alara. More rumors. More threats. The city polarized around the question, should women like these be educated? On the sixth day, a riot broke out. Pro-school and anti-school factions clashed in the streets outside the building. Violence erupted. Windows shattered. People were hurt. Alara watched from the school, horrified. "This has to stop," she said. "How?" Vivian asked. "We can't control angry people." "No, but we can give them a target." Alara turned from the window, decision crystallizing. "Tomorrow, when the board announces their decision, I'm going to make a statement. Public, clear. Either they support education or they admit they're just afraid of women having power." "That's dangerous," Rowan said. He'd been at the school all day, helping fortify against possible attacks. "You'll be painting a target on yourself." "I already have a target on my back." Alara met his eyes. "At least this way, I control the message." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Then I'll be standing beside you." The next morning, the board's decision arrived by messenger. Alara read it with Rowan looking over her shoulder. The Board of City Ordinances has determined that the Whitmore School for Women operates in violation of zoning regulations and poses a potential moral hazard to the community. Effective immediately, all operations must cease. The building must be vacated within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in legal action and fines. Alara read it twice. Then she walked to the window and looked down at the street, where students and supporters had gathered, waiting for news. "They shut us down," she said quietly. Behind her, Vivian cursed. Margaret sobbed. Catherine kicked a chair. Rowan put his hand on Alara's shoulder. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Alara thought about the women downstairs, about the lives changed, about the fight they'd waged and the system that had crushed them anyway. Then she thought about who she'd been 6 months ago. A girl with no choices, no voice, no power, and who she was now. "I want to burn it all down," she whispered. Rowan's hand tightened on her shoulder. "Then let's burn it down." Alara turned to face the others, wiped her eyes. "Get everyone together," she said. "Students, families, supporters. We're making a stand." "What kind of stand?" Diana asked. "The kind they can't ignore." Alara's voice was steel. "We're not closing. We're not leaving. If they want to shut us down, they'll have to do it in front of the whole city." Vivian's eyes widened. "You're talking about civil disobedience." "I'm talking about fighting for what's right." Alara looked at each of them. "I'm talking about refusing to disappear just because powerful men are uncomfortable. Are you with me?" Silence. Then Catherine smiled. "Hell yes." "Absolutely," Margaret said. "Always," Diana agreed. Vivian stepped forward, took Alara's hand. "To the end." Alara turned to Rowan. "This could destroy you. Your reputation, your position, everything. Then we'll rebuild." His eyes held hers, certain and unafraid. "I told you, we're partners. Where you go, I go." Something shifted in Alara's chest. Something huge and terrifying and wonderful. "All right," she said, "then let's show them what we're made of." They went downstairs together. The crowd outside had swelled, hundreds of people now, filling the street. News of the decision had spread. Alara stepped out onto the front steps. Rowan beside her, the others behind her. The crowd quieted. "The board has ordered us to close," Alara called out, her voice carrying across the street. "They say we're a moral hazard, a violation, a threat to the natural order." Angry mutters rippled through the crowd. "But we're not closing," she continued. "We're staying right here, teaching, learning, existing. If they want to shut us down, they'll have to drag us out." Cheers erupted from the supporters, angry shouts from the opposition. "I know some of you think I'm dangerous," Alara said, looking directly at the protesters, "that educating women disrupts the natural way of things. But I ask you, is it natural for children to die because their mothers can't read? For women to be trapped in poverty because they have no skills? For half the population to live in ignorance so the other half feels powerful? Some of the protesters shifted uncomfortably. This isn't about revolution, Alara continued. It's about basic human dignity, about giving people tools to survive. If that threatens you, maybe you should ask why. A man pushed to the front of the opposition group. You're destroying families, making women dissatisfied with their roles. No, Rowan cut in, his voice carrying authority. She's giving women choices. Choices my wife never had. Choices that would have saved lives, prevented suffering, made this city stronger. He stepped forward, and the crowd fell silent. I was wrong about this school, Rowan said. I was wrong about a lot of things. I thought power came from control, from maintaining order, from keeping people in their places. But real power, the kind that lasts, that matters, comes from lifting people up, from giving them knowledge and watching them transform their own lives. He turned to look at Alara. My wife is the strongest person I know, not because she's perfect, but because she's brave enough to fight for what she believes in, even when the whole world tells her to stop, even when it would be easier to give up. His voice roughened. I spent months trying not to care about her, trying to keep distance, to stay safe, but I failed. Because how could I not care about someone who looks at injustice and says, not on my watch? How could I not love someone who... He stopped, seemed to realize what he'd just said. The entire street went silent. Alara stared at him, heart pounding. What did you say? She whispered. Rowan looked at her, and in his eyes was everything he'd been holding back for months, fear and hope and desperate, terrifying honesty. I love you, he said, quiet enough that maybe only she heard, then louder. I love my wife, and I'll stand with her against anyone who tries to break her. The words detonated across the crowd like a bomb. Alara couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this man who'd spent months behind walls, now standing completely exposed. Before she could respond, a new voice cut through the stunned silence. How touching! Lord Carstairs appeared at the edge of the crowd, flanked by city guards. But I'm afraid declarations of love won't change the board's decision. His smile was cruel. You have 30 days to vacate, Duchess, or we'll remove you by force. You can't do that, Rowan said. Actually, we can. Carstairs pulled out a document. By order of the board and the city magistrate, this property is now condemned. Anyone refusing to leave will be arrested for trespassing. Horror washed over Alara. You're condemning the building? Structural concerns, safety violations. Carstairs' smile widened. I'm sure you understand, Your Grace. We can't have dangerous buildings in our city. There's nothing wrong with this building, Vivian shouted. Our inspectors disagree. Carstairs gestured to the guards. Clear the premises. Anyone who resists will be detained. The guards moved forward. The crowd erupted, supporters blocking the guards, protesters cheering, absolute chaos. Alara stood frozen, watching everything she'd built about to be ripped away by sheer abuse of power. Then Rowan's hand found hers. Do you trust me? He asked. What? Do you trust me? Alara looked at him, at the man who'd just declared his love in front of hundreds of people, who'd stood beside her through everything. Yes, she said, then follow my lead. He raised his voice, commanding attention. Lord Carstairs, I'm making you an offer. The older man paused. What offer? Drop the condemnation. Allow the school to remain open. In exchange, I'll publicly endorse your re-election campaign. Carstairs' eyes gleamed. That's generous, Your Grace, but I'm afraid my decision stands. Even if I add a donation to your campaign, say £10,000, gasps rippled through the crowd. Rowan, Alara hissed, you can't. 20,000, he continued, ignoring her. 30. Name your price, Carstairs. The older man smiled, triumphant. There is no price, Your Grace. Some things are more valuable than money, like maintaining the proper order of society. I see. Rowan's expression didn't change. Then I suppose there's no point in mentioning that I have evidence of your embezzlement from the city treasury. Carstairs went pale. What? 3 years of financial records, falsified reports, money diverted to personal accounts. Rowan pulled papers from his jacket. Different papers, Alara realized. He'd been planning this. Enough evidence to have you arrested, tried, and imprisoned. You're bluffing. Try me. Rowan's voice was ice. You have one chance, Carstairs. Rescind the condemnation. Allow the school to operate, or I hand these documents to the magistrate and watch your career burn. The street was silent. Carstairs' face cycled through shock, rage, fear. You can't prove anything, he finally said. Can't I? Rowan handed the documents to Thomas Graves. Mr. Graves here is an investigative journalist. I'm sure he'd love to examine these records, publish his findings. Thomas's eyes widened as he scanned the papers. Then he looked at Carstairs, excitement building in his expression. Your Grace, this is massive. Carstairs lunged for the documents. Guards moved to block him. Those are public records, Rowan corrected, which you've been falsifying. The question is, do you want this to become very public, very quickly, or do you want to make this all go away? The crowd held its breath. Carstairs looked at the papers, at Thomas, at the hundreds of witnesses. His shoulders sagged. The condemnation is rescinded, he said quietly. Louder, Rowan demanded. The condemnation is rescinded, Carstairs shouted. The school can stay open. Cheers exploded from the supporters, but Rowan wasn't done. And you're resigning from the board, effective immediately. You can't. I can, and you will. Resign now. Retire quietly, and I keep these documents private. Refuse, and I destroy you. Carstairs stared at him with pure hatred. Then he pulled out a paper, scrawled something, and threw it at Rowan's feet. I resign. He turned and pushed through the crowd, guards following. The street erupted in chaos, celebration from some, fury from others. But Alara only saw Rowan. He turned to her, and in his eyes was something she'd never seen before. Peace. Did you really have evidence? She asked. I've been investigating him for weeks. The moment I realized he was behind the condemnation threat. His mouth quirked. I told you, I'm your partner. Partners protect each other. You just made yourself a lot of enemies. Good. He stepped closer. I'm tired of playing their games. Tired of pretending power comes from cruelty instead of courage. Rowan, I meant what I said. His voice was quiet now, just for her. I love you, Alara. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you first stood up to me. Maybe when you built this school despite everyone trying to stop you. Maybe the moment you walked into that ballroom looking like you could burn the world down. Tears were streaming down Alara's face. I love you, he continued, and I'm sorry it took me so long to say it. Sorry I wasted months being afraid when I could have been. She kissed him. Right there, in front of hundreds of people, she kissed her husband like her life depended on it. When they broke apart, the crowd was cheering. Rowan rested his forehead against hers, breathing hard. Is that a yes? He asked. Yes, Alara laughed through her tears. Yes to all of it, to partnership, to love, to burning down broken systems together. Good. He kissed her again. Because I have plans for us, starting with expanding the school, then maybe taking on the Board of Education. The whole city government needs reform, honestly. One fight at a time, Alara interrupted, but she was smiling. One fight at a time, he agreed. Behind them, Vivian was crying. Catherine was cheering. Margaret and Diana were hugging. The school was saved. The war was won. And Alara Whitcomb Hale, Duchess of Blackthorn, stood in the ruins of the old order, ready to build something new. And Alara Whitcomb Hale, Duchess of Blackthorn, stood in the ruins of the old order, ready to build something new. But first, she had to survive the aftermath. The celebration lasted through the night. Students and supporters filled the school, their joy spilling into the streets. Wine appeared from somewhere, probably Vivian's doing. Someone started playing music. The building that had almost been condemned became the site of the most unlikely party the city had ever seen. Alara stood in the middle of it all, watching women who'd spent months afraid finally allowing themselves to hope. You did this, Rowan said beside her. He'd barely left her side since the kiss, his hand constantly finding hers like he needed to confirm she was real. We did this, she corrected. I couldn't have. Don't. He turned her to face him. Don't diminish what you built. I helped at the end, but you started this. You fought when no one believed in you. That was all you. The words settled over her, warm and terrifying. Because if this was all her, then the weight of maintaining it was too. What if I can't keep it going? The fear escaped before she could stop it. What if the next crisis destroys us? What if I'm not strong enough? You are. Rowan's hands framed her face. But even if you weren't, which you are, you're not doing this alone anymore. You have me. You have them. He gestured at Vivian and the others, laughing near the refreshment table. We're in this together. Together. The word still felt foreign, precious. I love you, Alara said, testing the words, tasting them. I don't think I've actually said it back yet. You kissed me in front of half the city. I got the message. Still, she rose on her toes, pressed her forehead to his. I love you. Even when you were impossible and cold and determined to keep me at arm's length, I think part of me knew I could love you. If you'd just let me. His arms tightened around her. I'm letting you now. They stood like that while the party swirled around them, two people who'd started as strangers and fought their way to something real. Then Catherine appeared, flushed with wine and excitement. You need to see this, she said, thrusting a newspaper at them. It was tomorrow's early edition. Thomas Graves must have worked through the night. The headline screamed across the front page. Board member resigns amid corruption scandal. Duchess's school saved. The article detailed everything. Carstairs' embezzlement, the attempted condemnation, Rowan's dramatic intervention. It painted Alara as a crusading reformer, and Rowan as the noble duke who'd risked everything to support her. They're making us sound like heroes, Alara said. You are heroes, Thomas Graves himself appeared, looking exhausted but triumphant. This story is going to run in every paper in the country. The school, your fight, everything. You've become a symbol. Of what? Rowan asked. Of change. Of refusing to accept the way things have always been. Thomas looked at Alara. You're not just running a school anymore, Your Grace. You're leading a movement. The words sent a chill through her. I didn't want a movement. I just wanted to help women learn. Too late. Vivian joined them, her expression serious despite the celebration around them. Thomas is right. What you've done here, it's bigger than one school now. Women across the city are watching, talking, asking why they can't have the same opportunities. That's good, isn't it? Diana said. It's dangerous, Margaret corrected. Every woman who speaks up becomes a target. Every family that sends daughters to learn faces backlash. We've won one battle, but the war is just starting. The reality of it crashed over Alara. She'd been so focused on saving the school, she hadn't thought about what came after. About the thousands of women who might now have hope. About the powerful men who'd see that hope as a threat. We need a plan, she said. A real one. Not just reacting to attacks, but building something sustainable. Agreed. Rowan looked at the others. Tomorrow we start organizing, properly. No more scrambling to put out fires. We get ahead of them. But tomorrow came with its own fires. Alara woke in her chambers, alone, since she and Rowan still maintained separate rooms despite everything, to find 3 letters waiting. The first was from her father. Brief, congratulatory, and utterly lacking in warmth. I'm pleased your school remains operational. Your success reflects well on the family name. Nothing about her courage, her fight, her transformation. Just relief that she hadn't embarrassed him. The second was from Lady Pemberton's daughter, Charlotte. My mother is ill. The stress of recent events has taken a toll on her health. I hope you're satisfied with the destruction you've caused. Guilt twisted in Alara's stomach. She'd never wanted to hurt anyone, even Lady Pemberton. She just wanted to be left alone to do good work. The third letter made the others irrelevant. It was from the Queen's private secretary. Alara read it 3 times, certain she was misunderstanding. Then she ran to find Rowan. He was in his study, already surrounded by correspondence. He looked up when she burst in, a smile starting before he saw her face. What's wrong? The Queen wants to meet me. Rowan went still. What? She handed him the letter. He read it, expression shifting from surprise to something like awe. She wants to discuss your educational initiatives, he said slowly. Possibly extend royal patronage. Is that good? Alara, it's extraordinary. He stood, moved around the desk. Royal patronage would give the school legitimacy that no one could challenge, protection from exactly the kind of attacks you've been facing. Or it could make us a bigger target. Maybe. He took her hands. But it would also give you a platform, resources, the ability to expand beyond one building in one city. The possibility was overwhelming. When does she want to meet? Next week? At the palace. Alara felt dizzy. I don't know how to talk to a queen. The same way you talk to everyone else, honestly. Rowan's eyes held hers. You spoke to a mob, to the board, to the entire city. You can handle one woman. One woman who could make or break everything with a word. Then make sure she only has good words to say. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. Vivian coached Alara on court protocol. Margaret helped draft talking points about the school's impact and future plans. Catherine researched the Queen's interests in charitable work. Diana organized testimonials from students. Rowan mostly watched, offering quiet support when Alara's nerves threatened to overwhelm her. You're doing it again, he said the night before the palace meeting. They were in the library, Alara surrounded by papers and half-written speeches. Doing what? Trying to be perfect. He pulled a chair beside hers, took the pen from her hand. You don't need a perfect speech. You need to be yourself. Myself isn't impressive enough for royalty. Yourself saved a school from destruction, built something from nothing, and changed hundreds of lives. If that's not impressive, I don't know what is. Alara leaned against him, exhausted. What if I fail? Then we try again. Differently. His arm came around her shoulders. But you won't fail. You're too stubborn. She laughed despite her anxiety. That's romantic. It's true. He kissed her temple. Your stubbornness is one of my favorite things about you. That and your complete inability to give up, even when any sane person would. Are you calling me insane? A little bit, but I like it. They sat like that for a while, the comfortable silence of two people who'd learned to exist in each other's space. Rowan? Alara said quietly. When did you know? That you loved me? He was quiet for a moment. Remember when you confronted me about the school? When you said you knew what it was like to have no choices? Yes. That moment, when you looked at me and I saw all the pain you'd been hiding, all the strength it took to survive our marriage. His voice roughened. I realized I'd been seeing you as this distant, untouchable thing, but you were just a person, hurting, fighting, refusing to break. And I thought, I want to know this person. I want to deserve this person. Tears pricked Alara's eyes. You do deserve me. I'm working on it. He tilted her face up, kissed her softly. Every day, I'm working on it. The next morning, they rode to the palace in tense silence. The building was massive, intimidating, designed to make visitors feel small. Guards checked their credentials. Servants escorted them through endless corridors. Finally, they were shown into a surprisingly intimate sitting room. Comfortable furniture, afternoon light streaming through tall windows. Not the throne room Alara had been dreading. The queen entered a moment later. She was smaller than Alara expected. Mid-50s, elegantly dressed, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She gestured for them to sit. Your Grace, Duchess. Her voice was crisp, educated. Thank you for coming. Your Majesty. Alara curtsied, hoping she got the depth right. The honor is ours. Let's dispense with the formalities, shall we? I didn't summon you here to watch you curtsy. The queen sat, studied Alara frankly. I've been following your school with interest. Tell me about it. Alara glanced at Rowan. He nodded encouragement. So she told the truth, about the women who came to learn, the obstacles they faced, the lives being transformed. She talked about the laundress's daughter, the seamstress's business, the widow's survival. Not statistics or grand theories, just human stories. The queen listened without interrupting. When Alara finished, she was quiet for a moment. You've made powerful enemies, she said finally. I know, Your Majesty. They'll keep attacking, finding new ways to undermine you. I know. So why continue? Why not accept a quiet life, enjoy your position, let someone else fight these battles? Alara met the queen's eyes. Because I can't. I've tried being quiet, being invisible. It was killing me. I'd rather fight and lose than disappear. Something shifted in the Queen's expression, almost like approval. I was married at 16, she said, to a man I'd met twice. I was expected to produce heirs and stay silent. For years I did exactly that. Smiled, nodded, played the role I was given. She stood, moved to the window. Then my husband died. And suddenly I had power, real power, not just the decorative kind. I could have done anything with it. But I was so used to being quiet, I almost stayed that way. What changed? Elara asked. A woman came to me, a factory worker whose children were dying from contaminated water. She wasn't supposed to be there, had no right to an audience. But she walked past every guard and servant and demanded I listen. The Queen turned back to them. She didn't ask politely, didn't bow or scrape, just looked at me and said, "You have power, use it, or admit you're as useless as the men who came before you." Elara's eyes widened. I had her thrown out, of course. It was insulting, presumptuous. The Queen's mouth quirked. And absolutely right. I'd been given power and was too afraid to wield it. That woman shamed me into action. What happened to her? Elara asked. I found her 3 days later, hired her as an advisor on sanitation and public health. She's still with me, 20 years later, insufferable and brilliant. The Queen returned to her seat. You remind me of her, Duchess. That same refusal to accept the world as it is. That same stubborn insistence that things can be better. I'm not trying to change the world, Your Majesty. Just help a few women survive it. That's how all change starts. Small acts of defiance that grow into movements. The Queen pulled out a document. I'm prepared to offer royal patronage to your school, official support, funding, protection from political interference. Elara's breath caught. Your Majesty, There are conditions. The Queen's voice turned businesslike. First, you'll expand. I want schools in 5 more cities within 2 years. Second, you'll accept oversight from a royal commission, not control but accountability. Third, you'll work with my advisors to develop curriculum standards that can be replicated across the kingdom. That's more than I ever hoped for. I'm not doing this out of charity, Duchess. I'm doing it because investing in women's education is good policy. Healthier families, stronger economy, more stable society. You've proven the model works. I'm simply scaling it. What about the opposition? Rowan asked. The men who'll see this as a threat? Let them. The Queen's smile was sharp. I've dealt with threatened men my entire life. They bluster and resist, but ultimately they adapt or become irrelevant. Your wife has already proven which category they fall into. Elara felt tears threatening. Thank you, Your Majesty. Don't thank me yet. This will be hard work. Long hours, constant scrutiny, battles with conservative forces at every level. Royal patronage protects you politically, but it also raises expectations. You'll be representing the crown now. That comes with pressure. I understand. Do you? The Queen leaned forward. Because once we announce this, you become a public figure. Your mistakes will be magnified. Your successes will be attributed to me. Your life will no longer be entirely your own. The weight of it settled over Elara. She thought about the quiet life she could have had, the comfortable invisibility she'd once craved. Then she thought about the women downstairs at the school, the lives already changed, the thousands more who could be. I'm ready, she said. The Queen studied her, then nodded. I believe you are. She stood, signaling the end of the meeting. We'll announce the patronage next week. My secretary will coordinate details. In the meantime, prepare your people. This is about to get much bigger. They were halfway to the door when the Queen spoke again. Duchess? Elara turned. That woman who shamed me into action, she told me something I've never forgotten. The powerful who refuse to help are just cowards with titles. Don't be a coward. I won't, Your Majesty. Outside, Elara waited until they were in the carriage before letting herself react. Then she grabbed Rowan and kissed him hard. We did it, she breathed against his mouth. You did it. He pulled her onto his lap, grinning like she'd never seen. Royal patronage, Elara. Do you know what this means? It means more work. It means legitimacy, protection. The ability to actually change things on a national scale. The enormity of it hit her. She started laughing, slightly hysterical. I came to this city 8 months ago to be an invisible wife. Now I'm working for the Queen. You were never going to be invisible. Rowan tucked hair behind her ear. You're too bright for that, too stubborn, too absolutely impossible to ignore. Is that why you love me? That's part of it. His expression sobered. The other part is watching you become exactly who you were meant to be. Watching you fight for it. I didn't just fall in love with you, Alara. I fell in love with who you are when you're free. The words hit her square in the chest. I'm not free, she said quietly. I'm still bound by society, by expectations, by this marriage, but you're choosing it now. He held her gaze. You're choosing the marriage, choosing the fight, choosing this life. That's a different kind of freedom. He was right. She was still the Duchess of Blackthorn, still subject to rules and restrictions, but within those constraints, she'd carved out space to be herself, to matter. I choose you, she said. I choose us. Good. He kissed her again. Because I'm not letting you go, ever. They arrived home to chaos. News of the royal meeting had somehow leaked. Reporters crowded the street, shouting questions. Supporters cheered. A few protesters waved signs about moral decay. Hastings met them at the door, looking harried. Your Grace, there are 17 messages requiring immediate response. The school has been flooded with enrollment requests, and... He hesitated. And, Rowan prompted, your father's solicitor is in the drawing room. He says it's urgent. Alara's stomach dropped. Rowan's father had been absent from their lives entirely. A cold, distant figure who approved the marriage arrangement and then disappeared back to his country estate. What does he want? Rowan asked, voice flat. He wouldn't say. Only that it concerns the dukedom. They found the solicitor perched on the edge of a chair, nervous and sweating. He stood when they entered. Your Grace, I apologize for the intrusion, but your father insisted. Just tell me what he wants, Rowan cut him off. The solicitor pulled out papers. His Grace the Elder Duke wishes to formally transfer the title to you. Immediately. Silence. Why now? Alara asked. His health is failing. He wishes to see the succession secured before... The solicitor trailed off delicately. Before he dies, Rowan finished. His face was expressionless. Does he want to see me? He requests your presence at the estate, to discuss terms. Terms? Rowan's laugh was bitter. Of course there are terms. What kind of terms? Alara asked. The solicitor shifted uncomfortably. His Grace the Elder wishes assurance that the dukedom will be managed, traditionally. He's concerned about recent publicity. Understanding crashed over Alara. He's concerned about the school, about me. Not in so many words, but get out. Rowan's voice was quiet and deadly. Your Grace, if you'd just get out. The solicitor fled. When they were alone, Rowan stood at the window, rigid with tension. Don't say it, he said. Say what? That I should go, talk to him, make peace before he dies. I wasn't going to say that. He turned, surprised. You weren't? No. Alara moved to him. I was going to ask what you wanted to do. I want to tell him to go to hell. The words came out raw. I want to refuse the title, the estate, all of it, if it comes with conditions about controlling you. That's not practical. I don't care about practical. His hands fisted. He abandoned me after my brother died, blamed me for surviving when the better son didn't, and now he wants to dictate how I run the dukedom, how my wife lives her life. Then don't let him. Alara took his hands, forced them to uncurl. Take the title, accept the succession, then do whatever the hell we want with it. He'll fight me, try to control things from beyond the grave. So let him try. He'll be dead. The blunt words made Rowan flinch. I'm sorry, but it's true. Whatever terms he tries to impose, they're only enforceable if you enforce them. Once you're the Duke, really the Duke, you make the rules. Rowan stared at her. You've gotten ruthless. I learned from the best. She smiled slightly. You broke a man's nose for me. I can handle a dying old man's disapproval. Despite everything, he laughed. When did you become the strong one in this relationship? I always was. You just finally noticed. The tension in his shoulders eased. He pulled her close, rested his chin on her head. What would I do without you? Be very bored and probably still emotionally constipated. Emotionally constipated? Vivian's phrase, but accurate. They stood like that until Rowan's breathing evened out. I'll go see him, he said finally. But you're coming with me. Are you sure that's wise? He clearly doesn't approve of me. Which is exactly why you're coming. Rowan pulled back to look at her. He needs to see us together. United. Understand that attacking you means attacking me. That'll go well. Probably not. His smile was grim. But I'm done hiding you away to make other people comfortable. You're my wife, my partner. If he can't accept that, then the title comes with conditions he won't like. They traveled to the estate 2 days later. The building was massive, cold, beautiful in an austere way. Rowan's childhood home, though he barely spoke of it. The old Duke met them in his study. Alara's first thought was how much Rowan resembled him. The same sharp features, dark eyes, commanding presence. But where Rowan had warmth beneath the coldness, his father had only ice. You brought her, the old Duke said by way of greeting. My wife, yes. Rowan's voice was flat. Duchess Alara. Alara curtsied. The old Duke barely acknowledged it. Sit, we have matters to discuss. They sat. Alara felt like a specimen being examined. I'm told you've been making quite a spectacle of yourself, the old Duke said to her. Schools for the lower classes, public confrontations with the board, now royal patronage. Yes, Your Grace. It's inappropriate. A duchess should be above such things. I disagree. The old Duke's eyebrows rose. You disagree? Yes. Alara met his gaze steadily. I think a duchess should use her position to help people. That's what power is for. Power is for maintaining order. Order built on suffering isn't worth maintaining. Silence. The old Duke's face darkened. You're impertinent. I'm honest. Alara didn't back down. You disapprove of me. That's clear. But I'm not changing to make you comfortable. Alara, Rowan started. No. She looked at him. He should hear this. I'm not going to smile and nod while he insults what we've built. She turned back to the old Duke. I'm sorry your health is failing. Truly. But if you think you can use it as leverage to control how your son runs the dukedom, you're wrong. Rowan is twice the man you ever were. He's strong and brave and actually cares about people beyond their usefulness to him. The old Duke's face went purple. How dare you? I dare because someone needs to say it. Alara stood. You had 2 sons. One died. The other survived and built a life despite your neglect and disapproval. Now you're dying and suddenly want to play father. It's too late. You don't get to dictate terms anymore. Get out. Gladly. Alara headed for the door. Rowan followed, but his father's voice stopped him. If you leave now, I'll cut you out of everything. The title, the estate, the fortune. All of it. Rowan turned. His expression was calm, almost peaceful. Do it, he said simply. The old Duke stared. What? Cut me out. Disinherit me. I don't care. Rowan's voice was steady. I have my wife. I have work that matters. I have a life I actually want to live. Your money and title were never what made me valuable. Alara taught me that. You'd throw away your birthright for her? In a heartbeat. Rowan smiled. You wanted me to be like you, cold, controlled, prioritizing duty over everything. But I'd rather be like her, brave enough to choose love. The old Duke's mouth worked soundlessly. If you want to discuss the succession without conditions, without trying to control how I live my life, I'll be at the main house. Rowan took Alara's hand. Otherwise, this conversation is over. They walked out together. In the carriage, Alara's hands were shaking. I shouldn't have said those things. I made it worse. You made it perfect. Rowan pulled her against him. He needed to hear it. I needed to hear it. What if he actually disinherits you? Then we live on what we have, which is more than enough. He kissed her forehead. I meant what I said. I'd give up everything for you. You shouldn't have to. I know. But knowing I would, knowing there's nothing more important than us, that's its own kind of freedom. 3 hours later, a messenger arrived. The old Duke was requesting their presence to discuss succession without conditions. Do we go? Alara asked. Rowan considered. One more time. If he tries anything, we leave. They returned to find the old Duke looking diminished, smaller somehow. Sit, he said, less an order now, almost a request. They sat. I've spent 30 years making sure everything was perfect, the old Duke said quietly. The estate, the finances, the legacy, I thought that was what mattered. That if I controlled enough, managed enough, nothing could go wrong. He looked at Rowan. Then your brother died. And I realized I'd controlled everything except what mattered. I didn't know him, didn't know you. I'd been so busy maintaining the dukedom, I forgot to be a father. It's a bit late for this conversation, Rowan said. I know. The old Duke's voice cracked. I know it's too late, but I want you to know. I'm proud of you, of what you've built, who you've become. Not in spite of me, but because you refuse to be me. Alara felt Rowan's hand tighten on hers. I'm dying, the old Duke continued. Months, maybe weeks. I want to transfer the title cleanly. No conditions, no restrictions. Do with it whatever you want. Just don't repeat my mistakes. Don't sacrifice your humanity for duty. The words hung in the air. Rowan was quiet for a long time, then, I won't. Good. The old Duke pulled out documents. Then let's make it official. The title, the estate, all of it. Yours to manage as you see fit. They spent the next hour signing papers, transferring property, securing the succession. The old Duke's solicitor witnessed everything. When it was done, Rowan stood, extended his hand. His father took it, held it for a moment. Be better than me, the old Duke said. I already am. Rowan's voice was gentle. But I'll keep trying anyway. They left at sunset. In the carriage, Alara leaned against Rowan's shoulder, exhausted. You're the Duke of Blackthorn now, she said. Really the Duke. We're the Duke and Duchess of Blackthorn, he corrected. Partners in everything. Partners in everything, she agreed. They arrived home to find the school lit up like a festival. Students and teachers had decorated the front with banners and flowers. A crowd had gathered, cheering when the carriage stopped. Vivian rushed forward. You're back. We have news. What news? The Queen's announcement went public an hour ago. Royal patronage, funding, everything. We're official. The crowd cheered louder. Alara stepped out of the carriage into the noise and light. Rowan appeared at her side, his hand finding hers. Look what you built, he said. She looked. At the school that had almost been condemned, at the students who'd stood up for her, at the friends who'd fought beside her, at the husband who'd learned to love her. We built it, she corrected. All right, we. Someone started singing. Others joined in. It was messy, off-key, perfect. Alara had come to this city 8 months ago as a transaction, a means to an heir, a woman expected to disappear. Instead, she'd built an empire, not of money or power in the traditional sense, but something better, a community of women supporting each other, a movement proving that education changed lives, a marriage based on choice and love instead of duty. She looked up at Rowan. He was watching her with an expression that made her chest ache. What? She asked. Just memorizing this. You, happy, surrounded by people who love you, living exactly the life you chose. He kissed her softly. It's my favorite sight in the world. Better than your fancy estate? Infinitely better. The party moved inside. Food appeared, more wine, laughter echoing through the hallways that had almost been taken from them. Alara stood in the center of it all, Rowan's arm around her waist, and let herself feel it. The victory. The joy. The hard-won peace. They'd fought battles and won wars, faced down mobs and corrupt officials and dying patriarchs, transformed a cold marriage into something real. And this was just the beginning, because tomorrow they'd start expanding. 5 new schools across the kingdom, curriculum development, training new teachers, building something that would outlast them both. But tonight, they celebrated. And when the party finally wound down, when the last guest left and the building fell quiet, Rowan took Alara's hand. "Come with me," he said. He led her upstairs, but not to her chambers, to his. She'd never been inside before. The room was surprisingly simple: dark wood, comfortable furniture, books everywhere. Personal in a way the rest of the house wasn't. "I had Hastings move your things," Rowan said. "If that's all right. I thought maybe we could stop pretending we sleep in separate rooms." Alara's throat tightened. "You had my things moved?" "All of them. Your desk, your books, that ridiculous armchair you love. I want you here, with me, every night." She looked around the room, saw her possessions mixed with his, two lives blending into one. "It's perfect," she whispered. Rowan pulled her close. "We're perfect. Messy and complicated and absolutely perfect." He kissed her, and it was different from all the times before. Not desperate or performative or mechanical, just honest. Two people who'd chosen each other, every day, until it became second nature. When they finally fell into bed, their bed now, Alara curled against him, feeling safe in a way she'd never expected to feel in this house. "I love you," she said into the darkness. "I love you too." His arms tightened around her. "Thank you for not giving up on me. On us. Thank you for finally letting me in." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, exactly where they belonged. Outside, the city was changing. Women were talking, questioning, demanding more. The school they'd fought for was becoming something bigger, a symbol of what was possible when people refused to accept the world as it was. And in the morning, Alara Whitcomb Hale, Duchess of Blackthorn, would wake up ready to fight for it all over again. But tonight, she was just a woman in love with her husband, dreaming of the future they'd build together. It was enough, more than enough. It was everything. It was everything. Alara woke to sunlight streaming through windows that had become theirs. Rowan was still asleep beside her, one arm thrown across her waist. His face relaxed in a way she'd never seen during their first months of marriage. She studied him in the quiet morning light, the sharp line of his jaw, the dark lashes against his cheek, the subtle rise and fall of his breathing. This man had stood beside her through everything, had learned to love her when neither of them knew how. She pressed a kiss to his shoulder. He stirred, eyes opening slowly. "Morning," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. "Morning." She traced patterns on his chest. "We have work to do." "Later." He pulled her closer. "Let me have this first." They stayed like that until the demands of the day became impossible to ignore. Hastings knocked with breakfast and a stack of correspondence. The school needed decisions. The Queen's Commission required responses. 5 new cities waited for schools to be built. Reality crashed back in, but it felt different now. Manageable. Because they were facing it together. "The Commission wants to meet next week," Alara said over breakfast, scanning letters. "They want to review our expansion plans." "What are our expansion plans?" Rowan asked. "I thought we'd start with—" She stopped, looked at him. "We need to hire someone to manage this. I can't run 5 schools alone." "Then we hire the best people we can find." Rowan buttered toast with the casual confidence of someone who'd never doubted his ability to solve problems with money. "Vivian can help screen candidates. Margaret knows business. We build a real organization." "That sounds expensive." "Good thing I'm rich." He caught her expression. "We're rich. Stop separating my money from yours. We're partners, remember?" Partners. The word still gave her a thrill. They spent the morning drafting plans. By afternoon, they had a structure. A central board overseeing all locations, trained teachers for each school, standardized curriculum with room for local adaptation, and funding streams beyond just Rowan's fortune. "We should include tuition assistance," Alara said. "Some women can pay, others can't. We need both to make it sustainable." "Agreed." "What about advanced courses, beyond basic literacy?" "Like what?" "Accounting, business management, legal basics, things that let women run their own enterprises." Alara stared at him. "That's ambitious." "You're ambitious. The school should reflect that." Rowan leaned back, studying her. "What do you really want to build, Alara? Not what's practical or acceptable. What's the vision that scares you?" She thought about it. About the women who'd come through the school, the potential she'd seen in them, the limitations that still held them back. I want a network, she said slowly. Schools, yes, but also job placement, business loans, legal advocacy, a whole system supporting women from education through economic independence. Then let's build that. Rowan, that would take years, massive funding, political battles. So? He smiled. We've got time, and we're pretty good at political battles. The audacity of it took her breath away. Not just a school, an entire infrastructure for women's advancement. The commission will never approve it, she said. Then we start small and expand, prove the model works. Let success be our argument. Before Alara could respond, Vivian burst through the door. You need to see this. She thrust a newspaper at them. It was an editorial, scathing, vicious, accusing Alara of everything from social manipulation to moral corruption. The author was anonymous, but the rhetoric was familiar. Lady Pemberton? Alara guessed. Worse. Vivian pointed to a paragraph. Read the part about the Queen. Alara's stomach dropped. The editorial didn't just attack her. It questioned the Queen's judgment in supporting the school, implied she'd been manipulated, suggested royal patronage was being wasted on a vanity project. This is treason, Rowan said flatly. Close enough. Vivian looked worried. If the Queen thinks you've embarrassed her, she won't pull patronage over one editorial, Alara said, hoping it was true. She might if public opinion turns against her. And editorials like this shape public opinion. The next 3 days proved Vivian right. More articles appeared questioning the school's value, the Queen's priorities, even Alara's marriage. Rumors spread that Rowan was being controlled by his ambitious wife, that the whole thing was an elaborate scheme to gain political power. We need to respond, Catherine said at an emergency meeting. How? Diana asked. Every time we defend ourselves, we look defensive. Then we don't defend, Margaret said. We attack. With what? Alara was exhausted, tired of fighting the same battles over and over. We've shown the school works. We have royal backing. What more can we do? Show them it's already bigger than they realize, Vivian said. How many students have gone through the program? 212. And how many have found employment, started businesses, changed their lives measurably? Alara pulled out her records. They'd been tracking outcomes from the beginning. 183 are employed or self-employed. 47 have started their own businesses. 62 have taught their children to read. The health outcomes alone, that's the story. Vivian leaned forward. Not abstract ideas about education. Concrete results, lives transformed. Make it impossible to dismiss. They spent the next week gathering testimonials, documenting outcomes, building an irrefutable case. Thomas Graves published the results in a special edition. The numbers were staggering. Public opinion shifted. Slowly at first, then faster as more women came forward with their stories. The seamstress who now employed 15 people. The widow who'd saved her family from poverty. The mother whose children survived because she could read medicine labels. The opposition tried to counter with moral arguments, but facts made better weapons than fear. 2 weeks after the first attack editorial, the Queen summoned Alara again. She went alone this time. Rowan had offered to accompany her, but this felt like something she needed to face herself. The Queen received her in the same intimate sitting room, but her expression was harder than before. You've caused quite a stir, Duchess. Your Majesty, I apologize if the controversy has... I'm not angry about the controversy. The Queen cut her off. I'm angry that you waited for permission to respond. You should have defended yourself immediately. Alara blinked. I didn't want to overstep. You can't overstep when you're in the right. The Queen stood, began pacing. I gave you royal patronage because I believed in your work, but I also did it to see if you were strong enough to handle what came with it. The attacks, the scrutiny, the constant battle. And? Alara's heart pounded. You hesitated, worried about propriety instead of fighting back. The Queen stopped, looked at her directly. I can't support someone who'll fold at the first sign of disapproval. I haven't folded. The school is still running. We're expanding. Because others pushed you to respond, not because you seized the initiative yourself. The Queen's voice was sharp. You have vision, Duchess, courage, but you're still operating like someone who needs permission to exist. That has to end. The words hit like a slap. Because they were true. Elara had spent her whole life seeking approval. From her father, from society, even from Rowan in those early months. She'd fought when cornered, but she'd never simply claimed her right to the space she occupied. "You're right," she said quietly. "I know I am." The Queen returned to her seat. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop apologizing for your existence. Stop waiting for others to validate your work. You're going to expand that school network, build your support system for women, and do it all without asking if it's appropriate." "Your Majesty, I'm not finished," the Queen leaned forward. "I'm also doubling your funding and assigning 3 of my advisors to help with expansion. You've proven the model works. Now we're scaling it properly." Alara's breath caught. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll stop being so damn careful. You've already won, Duchess. Start acting like it." The meeting ended with detailed plans for expansion. 5 schools within 6 months, not 2 years. A formal educational charter. Legal protections for students and teachers. Elara left the palace feeling like she'd been hit by lightning. Rowan was waiting in the carriage, took one look at her face and pulled her into his arms. "What happened?" "She called me careful." The words came out muffled against his chest. "Said I need to stop apologizing for existing." "She's not wrong." Elara pulled back. "You think I'm too careful?" "I think you're still fighting like someone who expects to lose, even after winning." His hands framed her face. "You've changed everything, Elara. The school, our marriage, this entire city. But you still act surprised when people support you." "Because I am surprised. I spent so long being dismissed, I don't know how to be anything else." "Then learn." He kissed her forehead. "Because the woman who faced down a mob and forced a corrupt board member to resign, she doesn't need anyone's permission." The words settled over her like truth. She'd won. Not just the school, but herself. Her voice, her power, her right to take up space in the world. It was time to stop being surprised by it. The expansion happened fast. Too fast some days. Elara barely slept, coordinating with architects, hiring teachers, reviewing curriculum, managing the endless logistics of building something from nothing. But she wasn't doing it alone. Vivian became director of operations, managing day-to-day functions across all locations. Margaret handled finances with ruthless efficiency. Catherine led teacher training. Diana coordinated with hospitals and charities to provide health services alongside education. And Rowan was everywhere, negotiating property deals, leveraging his political connections, using his title to open doors that would have stayed closed to women alone. "You're exhausted," he said one night, finding Elara still working at midnight. "I'm fine." "You're swaying in your chair. Come to bed." "I just need to finish." He pulled the papers from her hands. "It'll still be here tomorrow. You won't be useful to anyone if you collapse." She wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. She let him lead her to bed, too tired to even change clothes. "I'm proud of you," Rowan said as she drifted off. "In case I haven't said it enough." "You say it constantly." "Good." He pulled her close. "Because it's true. What you're building, it's extraordinary." 4 months after the Queen's announcement, they opened the 2nd school. Then the 3rd. By month 6, all 5 locations were operational, serving over 800 women. The impact was staggering. Employment rates among students reached 90%. Domestic violence reports dropped in neighborhoods surrounding the schools. Women with education and economic options left abusive situations. Child mortality decreased as mothers learned health basics. The numbers told a story that couldn't be dismissed. Then came the pregnancy. Elara realized she was late 3 weeks before she allowed herself to believe it. When the physician confirmed it, she sat in stunned silence. A child. The heir Rowan had married her to produce. The transaction that had defined their entire relationship. Except it wasn't a transaction anymore. She told him that night. Watched his face carefully for disappointment that this had taken so long, or relief that duty was finally being fulfilled. Instead, she saw joy, pure, uncomplicated joy. "A baby," he breathed. "We're having a baby." "You're happy?" The question came out smaller than intended. "Happy?" "Elara, I'm—" He pulled her into his arms. "I'm terrified and thrilled and completely overwhelmed. Are you happy?" She thought about the child growing inside her, about how different this was from what she'd imagined during those cold early months of marriage. "Yes," she said, "I'm happy." That night, they talked about the future, about raising a child to be brave and kind, about the world they were building for the next generation. "I want our daughter to grow up knowing she can do anything," Ilara said. "Daughter?" Rowan smiled. "Already decided?" "Hoping." She placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "A girl who won't have to fight as hard as I did, who'll have choices from the beginning." "And if it's a boy?" "Then a son who treats women like equals, who uses his privilege to lift others up." She looked at him. "Like his father." Rowan's eyes went bright. "I love you. I love you too." She kissed him softly. "Thank you for becoming the man I needed. Thank you for making me want to." The pregnancy changed things. Ilara had to step back from some responsibilities, delegate more. It frustrated her at first. She'd worked so hard to build this, hated giving up control. But her team proved capable, more than capable. They expanded operations, improved systems, made the schools run smoother than Ilara had managed alone. "Turns out you didn't need to do everything yourself," Vivian said with gentle smugness. "Who knew?" "Shut up." But Ilara was smiling. "Fine. You were right. I'm not indispensable." "You're absolutely indispensable, just not to every single daily operation." Vivian squeezed her hand. "You built something that doesn't need you to micromanage it. That's success, Ilara." The baby arrived on a cold morning in late autumn. Labor was brutal, 18 hours of pain that made Ilara understand why women had been dying in childbirth for centuries. But when the midwife finally placed a squalling, perfect infant in her arms, everything else faded. A girl. They had a daughter. Rowan wept openly, held them both like they were made of glass. "She's perfect." "She's wrinkled and red," Ilara laughed through her own tears. "Perfect," he insisted. They named her Catherine Vivian Hale, Catherine for Rowan's brother, reclaiming the name from painful associations. Vivian for the friend who'd saved Ilara from loneliness. The old Duke died 3 days after his granddaughter was born. He never met her, but he sent a letter, delivered posthumously. "To my son. I was wrong about many things, but I was right about one. You became a better man than me. Raise your daughter to be better still. Love, your father." Rowan read it once, then filed it away. He tried, at the end. "That counts for something," Ilara said. "Maybe." He looked at Catherine sleeping in her bassinet. "I'm going to do better. She'll know she's loved every single day." And he did. Rowan was an involved father in a way that scandalized traditional society and delighted everyone else. He changed nappies, walked the floors at night, attended every small milestone. "You're being ridiculous," one of his fellow lords said at a dinner party. "That's what servants are for." "My daughter is what servants are for?" Rowan's voice was dangerously quiet. "You know what I mean. It's beneath your station." "Nothing about my daughter is beneath me." Rowan stood. "Now, if you'll excuse me, it's her bedtime, and I read to her every night." He left the party early. Ilara found him later in the nursery, reading to a sleeping infant who couldn't possibly understand the words. "She likes the sound of your voice," Ilara said from the doorway. "She's asleep." "Doesn't matter. She knows you're here." Ilara joined him, looked down at their daughter. "We're doing all right, aren't we?" "Better than all right." Rowan pulled her close. "We're happy." They were. Against all odds, despite the cold beginning, they'd built something real. The schools continued to thrive. By Catherine's first birthday, birthday, there were 10 locations serving over 2,000 women. The model had been replicated in other countries. Educational reformers cited Ilara's work in policy debates. She'd become exactly what Thomas Graves had predicted, a symbol of change, of women's potential, of refusing to accept limitations. It was exhausting and exhilarating and sometimes overwhelming, but it was hers. The first anniversary of royal patronage was marked with a gala. The Queen attended personally, a rare honor. The ballroom glittered with nobility, politicians, educators, and students from every school location. Alara stood at the entrance with Rowan, watching people arrive. She was wearing deep emerald, a gown that made her feel powerful instead of decorative. Nervous? Rowan asked. Terrified. She squeezed his hand. What if I mess up the speech? You won't. But even if you do, they'll still love you. You're biased. Completely. He kissed her temple. But also right. The Queen arrived to fanfare. She greeted Alara warmly, asked about Catherine, complimented the school expansion. You've exceeded every expectation, she said. I'm impressed. Thank you, Your Majesty. Alara felt like she could finally accept the praise without dismissing it. I couldn't have done it without your support. You absolutely could have. You would have just had a harder fight. The Queen smiled. But I'm glad I could help. This is important work. The gala proceeded beautifully. Students gave testimonials about how education had changed their lives. The seamstress who now employed 30 people. The widow who'd become a teacher herself. The mother whose children were all enrolled in regular schools, breaking the poverty cycle. Each story was a victory. Each woman a testament to what was possible. When it was Alara's turn to speak, she stepped to the podium with her heart pounding, looked out at hundreds of faces. Some she knew, many she didn't. A year ago, I stood in this room and was publicly attacked, she began. A journalist accused me of corruption. A crowd called for my school to close. I thought everything I'd built was going to be destroyed. Silence. Everyone remembered. But something happened that night. People spoke up, not just my friends, though they were incredible, but students, mothers, women I'd never met. They told their stories, defended what we'd built together. She paused, gathering her thoughts. That's when I realized this was never about me. It was about creating space for women to claim their own power, to learn, grow, make choices. The schools are just tools. You're the real change. She looked directly at the students in the crowd. You're the ones who took education and transformed your lives, who started businesses, left bad situations, taught your children, who proved that women with opportunities can do extraordinary things. Her voice strengthened. So tonight isn't about celebrating me or the schools. It's about celebrating you. Every woman who chose to learn, every family that supported daughters and wives and mothers pursuing education, every person who looked at the old way of doing things and said, we can do better. The applause started softly, then built. Students stood, then their families, then everyone. Alara stood at the podium, overwhelmed by the response, until Rowan appeared at her side, took her hand, faced the crowd with her. Together, he murmured. Together, she agreed. That night, after the gala ended and guests departed, Alara and Rowan walked through the original school building. It was quiet, peaceful. Classrooms that had been battlegrounds now just held desks and books. Do you remember the first time we came here together? Alara asked. When you told me to keep it open? I remember thinking you were the bravest person I'd ever met. Rowan pulled her close, and being terrified that I'd let you down. You didn't. I almost did, so many times. His voice was rough. I was so determined not to care, I almost destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. But you didn't. Alara looked up at him. You let yourself care. Let yourself change. That took more courage than anything I did. We saved each other, Rowan said. You from invisibility, me from becoming my father. They stood in the quiet classroom, holding each other, reflecting on the journey from cold contract to genuine love. What do you think would have happened if we'd never fought for the school? Alara asked. If I'd just accepted the board's decision and given up? We'd have survived, the marriage, I mean. Rowan considered. But we wouldn't have this. We'd be cordial strangers sharing a house. Instead, we're partners sharing a life. Exactly. He kissed her softly. And I prefer this version. Me too. They returned home to find Catherine awake and fussy. The nurse had tried everything, but she only settled when Alara took her. She knows her mama, the nurse said, smiling. Alara walked the floors with her daughter, humming softly. Rowan appeared with a book, the same one he'd been reading since Catherine was born. Mind if I join you? He asked. Please. He read while Alara rocked Catherine. The words washed over them, a story about brave women and the changes they made. Catherine couldn't understand it yet, but someday she would. Someday she'd know what her mother had built, the fight she'd won, the world she'd changed. She's going to be extraordinary, Rowan said, looking at their daughter. She already is. Alara smiled. She exists in a world where women can be educated, start businesses, make choices. That's extraordinary. Thanks to you. Thanks to us. Alara met his eyes. All of us. Everyone who fought to make this possible. Catherine fell asleep to the sound of her father's voice and her mother's heartbeat, content, safe, loved. The next morning, Alara received a letter. It was from the first student who'd enrolled in the school, the laundress whose daughter had died. Dear Duchess, I'm writing to tell you my youngest daughter just learned to read. She's 6 years old and she read me a whole page yesterday. I cried so hard she got scared, but these were happy tears because my little girl has something I never had, a chance. Thank you for giving us that. Thank you for not giving up when they tried to stop you. You saved my family. You saved hundreds of families. Never forget that. With love and gratitude, Mary. Alara read it 3 times, then filed it carefully with all the other letters she'd received. Hundreds of them now. Each one a life touched, a family changed, a future made brighter. This was why she'd fought, not for fame or recognition, but for Mary and her daughter, for Catherine and the world she'd inherit, for every woman who'd been told she didn't matter. She went to find Rowan. He was in the study, reviewing plans for school number 15. 15, she said. We just opened 10. The demand is there. And we have the funding. He looked up, smiled. Unless you want to slow down? Did she? Alara thought about it, about the exhaustion that came with constant expansion, the pressure of managing something so big, but she also thought about Mary's daughter reading her first page, about all the girls who could do the same if they just had access. No, she said, let's keep going. That's my wife. Rowan stood, pulled her into his arms. Stubborn to the end. To the end, she agreed. Over the next 5 years, the network grew to 30 schools across 12 cities. The model expanded beyond basic education to include vocational training, business development, even legal advocacy for women facing injustice. Alara's work became internationally recognized. She spoke at conferences, advised other countries on education reform, published papers on women's economic empowerment. But the work she was proudest of was smallest. The individual women who came through the schools, the lives that changed one student at a time. She was 43 when the original school building was designated a historic landmark, the site where the education movement began, where a duchess had refused to disappear. They held a ceremony. The queen attended. Catherine, now 12 and every bit as stubborn as her mother, gave a speech about how the schools had influenced her life. My mother taught me that power isn't about having a title, Catherine said, her voice clear and confident. It's about what you do with your position, how you help others, who you lift up. Alara watched her daughter speak and felt her throat tighten. This girl would never know what it was like to be powerless, would never accept limitations on her potential. That was the real victory. Not the schools, not the recognition, but the next generation, growing up in a world that was just slightly better than the one before. After the ceremony, Alara found herself alone in the original classroom, the same room where she'd first told Vivian about her vision, where she'd planned battles and celebrated victories. Rowan appeared in the doorway, older now, gray threading through his dark hair, but his eyes held the same warmth they'd developed over their years together. Hiding? He asked. Reflecting. She gestured around the room. Remember when this was everything? One small building, 30 students. It felt impossible. You made it possible. He joined her, took her hand. You took an impossible situation and built an empire. We built it. All right, we. He smiled. I'm never going to win this argument, am I? Not as long as I'm right. They stood together in the quiet classroom, two people who'd started as strangers bound by duty and became partners bound by choice. I have something for you, Rowan said. He pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, nothing like the ostentatious wedding band she'd received during their arranged marriage. "What's this?" Alara asked. "A reminder." He slipped it onto her finger beside the old ring. "Of the woman who refused to fade, who built something extraordinary, who taught me what courage really looks like." Alara looked at the two rings together, one representing duty, one representing love, both part of her story. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me, for choosing me, for becoming my partner instead of my prison." "Thank you for the same," Rowan kissed her softly, "and for showing me that the best kind of power is the kind that empowers others." They left the school together as the sun set. Behind them, the building stood as a monument to what was possible when people refused to accept the world as it was. Alara had been told to disappear, to give her husband an heir and fade into the background. Instead, she'd built a legacy that would outlast them both, changed a system that had crushed women for generations, transformed a cold marriage into a partnership that proved love could be chosen, not just felt. She was the Duchess of Blackthorn, a wife, a mother, an educator, a revolutionary. But most importantly, she was herself, fully, completely, unapologetically herself. And that was the greatest victory of all. Years later, when Catherine had children of her own, she brought them to visit the school, showed them their grandmother's portrait in the entrance hall, told them the story of a woman who'd refused to be silenced. "What's the moral?" her youngest daughter asked. Catherine thought about her mother's journey from invisible bride to celebrated reformer, about the fights won and the world changed. "The moral," she said finally, "is that you're never powerless. Even when they tell you to disappear, you have a choice. You can accept the life they give you, or you can build the one you deserve." "Which did grandmother choose?" "She built." Catherine smiled. "And kept building until the whole world had to pay attention." The little girl studied the portrait. The woman looking back was older, confident, eyes full of quiet strength. "I want to build things too," she said. "Then you will." Catherine took her hand. "That's what grandmother taught us. That's her real legacy. Not the schools or the honors, but showing us we could." And in the portrait, Alara Whitcomb Hale seemed to smile, as if she'd known all along that her story wouldn't end with her, that the real victory was teaching the next generation to fight their own battles, to refuse to disappear, to build their own empires, to change the rules instead of breaking under them. She was told to disappear. Instead, she changed everything, and the world would never be the same.